missed it.
Are you sad? I made you laugh. Why do you want to deprive the world of my
Hello,
humor?
everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to our live recording. Hello, patrons, Shams, Norm, Andrea. What a trio. In
Our
the chat,
favorite.
right to start.
You know what I call Norm, Shams, and Andrea? The triumvirate.
The triumvirate of.
That's it. They're beyond. They don't need an of. They just are.
I like it. I guess.
What was the famous triumvirate? Was it more than a triumvirate?
There were 3 musketeers.
Greek. There's like a Greek civilization triumvirate.
I don't know that. I don't know the answer to that. I'm in the middle of sorting this spreadsheet while
the first triumvirate was Caesar, Julius Caesar,
with
Pompeius Magnus, and Licinius Crassus.
Well,
so I don't know which of Norm, Shams, and Andrea are each of the members of this triumvirate. Oh, and Ashley's here. So now it's a Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
Or is Mount Rushmore 5?
No, Mount Rushmore's 4.
Okay. I better be ready for the next one.
Well, what is a 5? Well, 5 could be like a hockey team minus the goalie, like the skaters on the ice. But okay, I guess with that we can say hello and we get the show going here. I'm excited.
Yeah, this will be my last chip.
Your last chip? Oh, okay. What kind of chip? A Triscuit or a potato?
No, a potato. I hope my periodontist isn't watching.
Or your nutritionist.
I don't have a nutritionist.
You have a periodontist. What is a periodontist? I actually don't know what that is. Sounds toothy.
Someone who works with gums.
Gums.
Yeah, so I had a gum graft a few weeks back now.
Oh, how's that? How are you doing?
Oh, the stitches are still in. It was like the whole bottom of my, or like this whole like 2 sides. So they use tissue from the top, from the roof of, like they slice off from the top and use that. But because there was so much to cover, they also used what they call sort of inconspicuously donor tissue. Guess who the donors are?
Oh, do you know your family?
No, it's someone dead. It's like from a cadaver.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I am like a part zombie now or something.
You should find out who it is and then like send a thank you gift to their family.
Thanks for the gum tissue.
Like let them know that like their memory lives on in you. And then
send
them a link to the podcast and then send them a link to the podcast and be like, these are your gums.
I'm endangering their donation right now by eating this potato chip, which I'm not supposed to have.
Oh, that was where we were.
Yeah.
Okay. So why are you eating it? You're so
disrespecting
hungry.
Their memory. So I hope the donor's family isn't watching.
Trick is to not have. You can't have that stuff in the house.
Yeah. Well,
not good for you.
It's just like it was a day. It's dark. It was
Open
snowy.
Up the chips.
Yeah, like just kind of grumpy vibes today.
Treat yourself. But now we're gonna have fun. All right.
So it's like sad eating.
I'm gonna cheer you up, Brian, with a really fun show, I think.
I you know me. I flip the switch. I feel like this has happened a few times in the last year. But
I want to make you happy also. Like I want it to be a fun show, like not just like you do a good job. I want like you to have a good time.
Okay.
I think you will. We'll be good. All right, let's start.
I always do. I have to eat this chip really slowly.
All right. Yeah. Okay. I guess I usually mute you anyway, so I don't need.
I'm gonna mute myself. I didn't know you were going for it. Okay.
Is your fan going, by the way?
Not right now.
Let me know when it is. It is handy to like have that moment of silence where I can like catch it for the noise reduction.
Okay.
So let me know when that happens. Okay. Yeah. Yes! Welcome everybody to another episode of Keep It Girls and Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by 2 guys who have not championed Erik Karlsson enough this season. So we're going to do a whole show just on him. I'm your host, Dylan Dabrowski, and with me to break down the hottest and coldest players on each team, sorted by how many points per game Erik Karlsson has versus those teams in his career. That's right. Who comes up with this stuff? It's Brian Comm. How's it going, Brian?
Hey, Elon, it's going good. I hope you're good. I hope everybody listening is good. I mean, like, we have to find creative ways. We can't go alphabetical all the time. And, usually we're just like, okay, we'll pick a random place to start and then move through. But it's fun to choose some kind of arbitrary way to organize. And yes, what this means is we are visiting all 32 teams this episode. So buckle up, strap in. It's going to be a wild ride all over North America.
I love the shows where we go through every team, and it's like I'm the guy who comes up with what we're going to talk about on the show. I don't know why I just don't do this every week, because every once in a while I'm like, Brian, let's do an every team thing, and I get so excited about it. It's like I don't know. I just feel like there's lots of stuff to talk about, and today we're going to do something even more special for those that weren't catching everything that I said at the start. There's this awesome site that we're presented by called DobberHockey.com. Okay, and they have great articles and ramblings, and then there's also these tools on, like, I guess a sister site of Dobber Hockey called Frozen Pool. It's like frozenpool.dobbersports.com or Frozen Tools, I guess they call it. The URL is Frozen Pool, but it's called Frozen Tools. I don't know. I didn't build it, but okay, it's an amazing site. And if you just go to the homepage of that site, I like a site with like a really good homepage. Like, for example, GameDayTweets.com. You go to the homepage, all of a sudden you're seeing all the line tweets from all the teams. Beautiful. Frozen Tools, same thing. There's for every team, they have a bunch of links for each team, and then also just a list of like who are the hottest players and coldest players on the team. So I thought, what a fun thing. Let's just go through each team, look at what Frozen Tools is telling us about who's hot and who's cold, and we'll talk about some of these guys and answer the typical questions. Why is this guy hot? Do we expect him to continue to be hot? Why is this guy cold? Should we add him? Should we drop him? So that's the plan for today's episode. We'll see how it goes. And again, we're going to go. The order is going to be, we've got separately, Brian worked out these numbers. I hope these are correct. We've got every single team in the NHL and how many points per game Erik Karlsson has against that team. And we're going to go by the team that he's the most successful against to the least successful against. And that's the plan. So, Brian, before we get into it, any other final things I should mention in terms of setting the table here, or should we just dive in? You're not going to believe the team that he's the highest against. You couldn't write this stuff.
The table's been set. Let's eat. Well, okay, I'm gonna spoil it. Actually,
Okay.
The first team is San Jose. He's been his most successful team that, like, his most successful production points per game. It's been against San Jose, which, Elon, it's actually like, maybe that is why. I mean, he's sort of
signed him.
He sort of handpicked the destination, but maybe that's one reason why they were willing to pay the price that they paid, because no one had seen firsthand just how destructive Erik Karlsson could be, more than the San Jose Sharks themselves.
Yeah. Wait, I actually don't remember the history that well. He handpicked because they were it was a trade, right? I guess he had like a list of teams that he, the typical like list of teams that he refuses to be traded to, but he didn't handpick just the Sharks, right? Like,
no, I think that he had some say. I think there was an assumption that he was going to land in San Jose for most of the time. And whether, that was about they had the pieces or that's where he wanted to go, it all worked out.
Okay, yeah. So let's look at the Sharks. And over here on Frozen Tools, one of the hot players is Erik Karlsson. So we can't just talk about how he's continuing. Like, remember at the start of the year, he had like that hot start. And I feel like even on the show, I'm not gonna say it was me, but someone else on the show that wasn't me might have said that this was unsustainable. Like, don't get, like, it's exciting, but who knows how long. Anyway, that's all in the past, because he now had, like, the thing with Frozen Tools also is they show like the hot streak, like they sort of break it down into like when the hot streak started, and usually it's like 4 points in his last 3 games, something like that. For Erik Karlsson, it's showing 31 points in his last 21 games. So basically, it's cutting out the first 9 games of the season. Since then, he's just been on fire. He's never slowed down. He's up to now 37 points in 30 games on the year for 101 point pace. You got that right, leading all defensemen in points. He's the best. More shots per game than he's taken, like, as a Shark, in his career. Like, just everything is amazing for Erik Karlsson. So he's one of the hot players that there's probably not much advice we can give at this point, unless, Brian, you're going to drop like a crazy like sell high, which I don't even know if we're going to, like, I'll have to mute your microphone if you want to do that. But then another one I'll throw out there that's pretty obvious at this point, but like, maybe not, is Tomas Hertl. Right, he signed that big contract to start the year, and I think he actually kind of started slow. And maybe a lot of people, I had him on my dynasty team. I had to take on this 8-year, 8 years, 9 million or 8.137 mil per year contract. When the season started, he only had like a couple of assists, or a goal and an assist in his first like 6 games. I was like, oh boy, this might be a long 8 years with this contract. But since then, he's been amazing. And his current hot streak, 6 points in his last 4 games. So Karlsson, Hertl. Are we worried about these guys, or are these just like 2 stars and they're just going to keep rolling?
These are two stars, and they're just going to keep rolling. I mean, maybe not quite like Hurdle's point per game pace is more sustainable to me than Karlsson's 100-point pace, but still, there's no reason that I can find to disbelieve what either one is doing. For Karlsson, whatever 5-on-5, like, yeah, he's shooting a little bit above what we'd expect him to, but also he and Hurdle, like that Sharks power play hasn't been great. And so for two key contributors on the power play to be pacing for about 24 points, that's Hurdle's pace and Karlsson's pace respectively on the power play, there could be room for them to do more. So like there's room for them to regress at 5-on-5, because I think that they've probably deserved a little better on the power play. That power play is like never been that great, but that top unit this year is also seeing over 70% of the time on ice, whereas in the recent years it's sort of been Hurdle's seen less than 60% share of power play time. Karlsson's seen about a 60% share of power play time. Now it's like there's no Brent Burns manning his second unit, right? It's this top unit or bust. And I don't even know that Hurdle and Karlsson have made the most of that top unit yet. So it's been a great year for them. And if you want to try and take anything away from what they're doing at 5-on-5, which there's really not a whole lot to take away from them, you can kind of make up for the difference with power play points that still might come. What a great year. And Hurdle's like generally been a pretty frustrating player, right? He's been really inconsistent over he comes and goes and streaks, and he always ends up in a decent place. But we even see it in his overall season career numbers, 80 points, 60 points, 70 points, 65 points. And now this year he's back on an 80-point pace. So I think it's pretty sustainable. I just want to see him, not go cold for extended time this year, and also be able to keep it up into next year. But for what we're seeing right now, looks good from Hurdle and Karlsson.
Yeah. And hey, like they help each other, right? Like I think Hurdle is less likely to go cold because he's playing with Erik Karlsson, who's like now back to being this like amazing offensive defenseman. Hurdle's obviously on this line with Timo Meier, who's having a good year. And then Kevin Labanc, just mention him really quickly, also on that top line. And Labanc is someone who I think isn't that good. Like, I don't know. Like anytime I see him even on a hot streak, I'm like, it's Kevin Labanc. He's disappointed us too many times, but he's actually on a hot streak himself, 4 points in his last 4 games. And then also, Brian, you mentioned how there's no more Brent Burns to challenge on the other power play. There is, though, another power play that's on like sometimes, rarely. And the defenseman who's manning that power play is also on Frozen Tools hot list in Matt Benning, who, I mean, okay. Matt Benning's 28 years old. He's been in the league a little bit of time. He was with the Oilers and then he was with the Preds, but now all of a sudden he's on a hot streak. He's got 4 points in his last 3 games. Even before that, you look at his game log, it's all assists, but he's getting a decent number of assists and also some blocks. So I don't know. In your super deep, some hits, I don't know, 2 or 3 hits a game. So yeah, in your deeper leagues that are bangers leagues, maybe Matt Benning isn't the worst option. I don't know, but I'm not gonna get too excited about him.
I mean, it's pretty crazy. Matt Benning has 9 points in his last 10 games. And like you mentioned, this second power play, it doesn't mean anything. Only one of those points has come on the power play. But it is pretty crazy that he has 9 points in 10 games, because in 65 games last season, Matt Benning had 11 points in Nashville. The previous season, in 53 games, Matt Benning had 4 points. The previous season in Edmonton, in 43 games, Matt Benning had 8 points. So like we've never seen production like this from him before. I'm not sensing that he has like found a new gear to his game. I mean, it's a like I'm open to things changing. He's definitely seeing the biggest.
You don't need to be open to it. You know who he is? Great. He's Nick Jensen. Remember earlier in the year when Nick Jensen all of a sudden was good?
Well, like Dmitry Orlov is also someone who always comes to mind when we're like, oh, like could this be a break? I was like, no, probably not. Like they're, like Pesky or Slavin, like these Carolina guys that go off sometimes. It's rare that we see it happen in San Jose, but Benning's been seeing bigger minutes than he's ever seen anywhere in his career to date. And it looks like as of the last game, he was on the top pairing with Marc-Edouard Vlasic at 5-on-5 at even strength. So I guess that extra ice time is helping him enjoy the points while they last. But yeah, I'm not expecting, and he doesn't really do any, he'll help you with some blocks, some hits, and the points are going to stop sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're on the same page there. Then as far as the cold streaks go on San Jose, not really anyone worth talking about. The Kaapo Kakkonen, man, what a fall for him, right? Like at one point it looked like he may
Is it
even be the
though?
starter. Well, I don't know. I thought he had a
It's a
decent
fall
chance.
from where you had him. Like you like I don't do this often, but I feel like going into the season, and I could have, there's no point to me even like pointing this out
Sure. He like
because
ended last year strong. He had
goalies
a
are
good
so
end to last year.
50-50. Yeah. And everybody was like, people were high on him. Like, oh yeah, I think he's the de facto, James Reimer won't be much competition for him. James Reimer's been injured and Kaapo Kakkonen still can barely hold on to the job. So like, he's someone I don't really ever see being able to hold on. He kind of reminds me, Elon, like if another Finnish goalie from the days of yore. Do you remember Antero Nidimäki?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah. So, well, like he was just someone who it was like, oh, maybe. And he'd look good for 3 or 4 games at a time and then rarely again, except
Maybe
I think he was probably better than Kaapo Kakkonen.
kind of sounds like also like Cal Peterson, who
Yeah.
like, we kept on thinking he was going to be good.
And this isn't the end of Kaapo Kakkonen. Like maybe in a future year, he steps up and does better and works on his game. But for anybody hoping that he was going to be a competent starter on a San Jose team this year, I don't think it's happening.
Yeah, well, they called up this guy when Reimer got injured, Eetu Mäkiniemi, which is kind of a fun name just because they used to have this goalie, Antti Niemi, and now they've got a Mäkiniemi. But anyway, he had a really good game against Anaheim, stopped 23 of 24. I was seeing some tweets, who knows like what's going to happen, right? But like, I wouldn't like maybe what if they like, when Reimer comes back, what if they just waive Kakkonen? Probably no one will claim him, or maybe someone will. Maybe they go with the Mäkiniemi. I know my friend John Reed, who's a big Sharks fan and the producer of the Great Short Shifts episodes on Twitch. He's telling me that he thinks Mäkiniemi is really good, and he has no faith in Kaapo Kakkonen. He told me that, Brian, in our joint league, where John and I are co-commissions, he told me that he wants us to watch list Mäkiniemi, and I was like, isn't he going to the minors? He's like, just put him on the watch list. Okay, and it's like, all right, he's on the watch list.
It's not a huge mountain to climb on that San Jose depth chart. You have Reimer, who like could be trade bait and gone. You have Kakkonen, who is brought in to hopefully take the mantle from Reimer, but has failed to. So why not potentially just go to the next guy in line?
Yeah. So I guess we'll see what happens there. I guess LA already set the precedent. They waived Cal Peterson, so why can't San Jose now waive Kakkonen? Okay, one team down. Let's go to the next team here. The Sharks are the team that Erik Karlsson was the most successful against in his career. Next are the Edmonton Oilers, 1.14. We didn't give the stats. 15 points in 13 games Karlsson had versus San Jose. 24 points in 21 games versus Edmonton. So let's go over to Frozen Tools here, and there's not going to be a huge surprise. Connor McDavid is hot. Connor McDavid has been hot the whole season. He has 54 points in 20. Every time I bring up Connor McDavid, he has 2 points per game. And I guess double of 28 games would be 56. So he's actually kind of falling short a little bit. Only 158 point pace right now. So we'll have to see if he can pick up his game. It's like, Brian, remember a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Mitch Marner being a little bit disappointing when he was in the middle of this like historic point streak. That's like Connor McDavid, like not being at 2 points per game. Let's go, guy. By the way, Brian, I won a free coffee for a week from that Tim Hortons goal guessing game, and one of my tricks in this past 7 days was I just picked Connor McDavid whenever there was the option, and he always scores. He's scored a goal 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 games in a row that Connor McDavid has scored a goal, and he's like not even, but people talk about Ovechkin and like Austin Matthews is like the people that are like, the people we expect to be the highest goal scorers in the league, and McDavid's more like a Wayne Gretzky type, who is the all-time leading goal scorer. So I don't know, like Connor McDavid, he also scores a ton of goals. Like he's everything. He's the best. Why am I spending so much time on Connor McDavid?
Well, because we never do, and like the thing is, poor Connor McDavid, he could be the best NHL player we've ever seen. And it's just like, yeah, you keep being the best player. We're going to focus on these other guys who are like Matt Benning and talk more about him. But maybe let me just add this little Connor McDavid factoid to the conversation while he's on this 158 point pace. If you took away all of Connor McDavid's even strength points, he would still be on pace for a point per game. He has 28 special teams points, 27 on the power play, 1 shorthanded in 28 games.
Yeah, that's he's good.
His 5-on-5 production, like per 60, is actually the lowest it's ever been in his career. Yeah.
So that just means that's how he's gonna get back to that 2 points per game. Is he's just gonna improve that even strength.
Yeah.
All right. And obviously, a nice thing for the Oilers is obviously they have McDavid. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is also on this list, being super hot. He's got 8 points in his last 4 games, which is insane. Good for him. He was actually a free agent in Tier 1 at one point a long time ago. I'm not going to call out who dropped him, but he went for a lot of fab, and I should obviously bid more than that. Then the other hot player here is a goalie. Stuart Skinner has kept it going. I remember, a month ago, it's been a while already, but I remember we were talking about it looks like Skinner's starting to steal starts from Jack Campbell. And I think at this point, we've already said it. Maybe it was even last week. Like at this point, it's over. Or I guess it's never over, but it's like Skinner is amazing. He keeps on putting up amazing starts. So according to Frozen Tools, here 3 wins, 4 quality starts in his last 4 games. You look at the save percentages. Yeah, like every game he's letting in 2 or 3 goals, but it's a lot of shots against. There was a 50 shot against game against Washington, and so he took a loss there, unfortunately. But I guess that 3-2. He saved 42 of 44 in the most recent game, a win versus Minnesota. So yeah, Stuart Skinner holding up. Jack Campbell not so much. And I don't know if Skinner's available in your league at this point. I see him as that would be nuts. Like he's probably if we were to do a Schmore goalies board right now for the rest of the season, we'd have this guy like pretty high, maybe not tier 1, but
could be tier 2 or 3. Like that's how much it looks like Skinner has established himself in that Edmonton net. And not only has he established himself ahead of Jack Campbell, but he's also established himself ahead of a lot of NHL goalies this year. His performance above expected put Stuart Skinner in like really, really strong territory. If you're just looking at the goalies who have played like enough minutes to decide that, this is a decent sample of games and they're not just playing like just looking for a reasonable sample of games. Stuart Skinner ranks 5th in the NHL and how he's performing compared to his expected save percentage, behind Sorokin, Matt Murray, Hellebuck, and Ilya Samsonov. So, of course, 2 Toronto goalies in the top 5, and the one they let go is being beat out by another goalie that's in this top 5. Stuart Skinner's been amazing. Jack Campbell, in the few attempts he's had lately, like just look at his game log. The last 4 times Campbell's gotten a start, and this basically spans a month now because it happens so rarely. 833, 870, 903, 781. Just 1 win in that bunch of appearances too. So he was dropped in a league where like there's limited moves. He would have been golden at the start of the year because I'm in a league. It's basically wins only for goalies, and you want that workhorse goalie who's going to win. And Jack Campbell seemed like a pretty decent bet at the time. And now that he's been given up on and no one's even grabbing him, I mean, it seems like we all agree Jack Campbell is cooked until Skinner falters, which there's no sign of it.
Yeah, I'm actually looking in tier 1 of Cupful. Epic Neil time. Tom still holding on to Campbell, and Tom's like a really good player. I'd be very curious for Tom to share with us on the Discord why he's still holding on to Jack Campbell. Maybe he knows something that we don't. Because I my advice would be to drop him, like in all leagues. Like I can't even imagine why you would still have him. But okay, as far as the cold streaks go, because he's not on the official list, I guess like for Frozen Tools, if you want to be on the list of cold players, you have to actually be playing games. Evan Bouchard tops the list though, and that's he's been one of the bigger disappointments. I wonder who's a bigger disappointment this year between Bouchard and Jack Campbell, actually, because they were both probably drafted pretty high in their leagues, and I'd be surprised if they're still on the rosters of the people who drafted him. Like Bouchard is now pointless in his last 4. Now we're looking at 11 points in 28 games overall. It's a 32-point pace. Like basically nothing. Like the only reason you're holding Bouchard right now is you're just kind of hoping that things will change. Like there's no reason based on his numbers. I guess he had like a little bit of a run like 2 weeks ago.
It made us think that maybe he was making some progress and getting himself on the map. And there were a few games where he saw a greater than 50% share of the power play time, although some of that might have just been, coincidental based on how line changes shook out as power plays happened. But the fact that he's gone quiet again has made it really hard to keep waiting on Evan Bouchard to break through. Once he breaks through, you're going to wish you had him already and suffered through whatever's going on now. But that's what you will be doing while you wait for that breakout. If he's on your roster, you're just not getting a whole lot out of Evan Bouchard until he gets up on that top power play.
But you're like confident it's going to happen eventually. They do have this guy, Philip Broberg, who started to get into games. He's barely playing. Like
I don't think Broberg has ever been sort of like looked at as a power play 1 quarterback. I think he's someone who could be capable of it. But I think the scouting reports I've read on him over the past years since he's been drafted is like, could be a solid top 4 all around sort of player.
No, I get that.
Like, no particular offensive acumen that would put him above Evan Bouchard, who I think has that offensive acumen.
Yeah, but at the same time, at some point, if they don't like Bouchard on the top power play, they'll
Let me
try
guess,
someone
you
else.
have Broberg on your dynasty team.
I do actually.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
We
not
would have
saying
moved
it is.
on from him by now if you hadn't.
I'm just saying. I'm not even talking about Broberg. I'm just saying that Bouchard, as time goes by, he becomes less and less of a sure thing to me. I think he's still like the front runner. It's like Cal Peterson again. I'll just bring him up for all my examples. It's like, we kept on talking about like, yeah, he's struggling, but he's still the future in LA. And then as time goes by and he keeps doing nothing, at some point you start to wonder, maybe he's not working out in that spot. But anyway, whatever. We'll see how that, maybe by the end of, maybe in like 2 weeks from now, Bouchard will be someone you want. But right now, like you said, Brian, you're struggling. If you're holding him, you're just hoping for things to change. All right, let's see. Erik Karlsson's next most successful team, the Minnesota Wild, 28 points in 25 games. We've got quite a few teams here that Karlsson's over a point per game against. What a career for this legendary. And it's not even over. Who knows what's next for Erik Karlsson. But okay, over on Minnesota, the hottest players are number one of Karlsson's former teammates, I think. Did they overlap? Philip Gustafsson.
They did not overlap.
They did not overlap. Okay, well, Gustafsson actually is on a nice little run. He's barely played, so but he just had a game against the Canucks where he shut them out, stopping 35. Apparently, it was his first ever career shutout. So congratulations to Philip Gustafsson. The thing is, like, Fleury hasn't been that great lately, which does make me wonder if this could be like a bit of a Calgary situation, where Vladar is slowly starting to, steal starts away from Markstrom. I don't think we've seen enough from Gustafsson to like think like, okay, like this guy's totally going to take over, but keep your eye open, right? A good game now. I wonder if he gets the next game over Fleury, who, like I said, has been struggling a little bit. And you've been a big fan forever of Gustafsson, right, Brian?
Yeah. Although I had sort of given up based on like recently, like I know things weren't good for him in Ottawa. Like it wasn't a situation for him to succeed. And then he went to Minnesota and laid a couple eggs in his first couple of outings with the Wild, but then has picked it up since. Only 2 rocky starts in his last 8 appearances, which is like, that's good for somebody as new to the league and brand new to a team as Gustafsson, who's now 934 in his last 8 games, including, that 35 save shutout at Vancouver. And like you said, Elon, Marc-Andre Fleury has not been so hot lately. His save percentage relative to expected is actually the same as Jack Campbell's. So like if you're looking for somebody who could be ripe for the picking, then Marc-Andre Fleury isn't a terrible guess, except that I have a little less faith just because we've seen less of Gustafsson. Like I saw enough of Skinner last year to think, maybe this guy's got something. Now I'm in that phase for Gustafsson, but Skinner's already a step ahead because he's proven himself in like 2 different stretches or 3 different stretches, and Gustafsson is just getting on the board. But if you are desperate for goaltending and looking for a few more starts, I wonder if Gustafsson can find his way into the net a little more often than the once a week he's been there for the last few weeks.
Well, next week, Minnesota does play 4 times, as we heard on the latest stream scheme, which if you haven't listened to yet, it dropped earlier on Sunday. Minnesota has a streamagami. Anyways, you'll listen to stream scheme, you'll learn all about it. They play 4 times: Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, all off days. So there are no back-to-backs. So theoretically, they could give Fleury a lot of games, but maybe they won't. Maybe it'll be, if I had to bet, maybe it'll be half, like maybe Gustafsson gets the next game, then maybe Fleury gets a couple, and then Gustafsson goes on Sunday. So I could definitely see him getting 2 games next week if you wanted to give him a shot. Then the other hot players listed, Kirill Kaprizov and Matt Zuccarello. So I guess not too much to say about them. Zuccarello, man, just really has he had a good career in New York, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying he turned his career around, but like he's turned into like a point per game stud here at the age of 35. I want to give like most of the credit to Kaprizov, but obviously we can't totally do that, right? We have to give some credit to Matt Zuccarello for just showing himself to be a really good player in his later days.
He's really stepped up, and I think he's putting up that point per game place really quietly so far this year, even though he did it last year. I drafted him in a couple of leagues. I think a lot of folks weren't believers, but there's no one else who I figured would play with Kaprizov, and he's someone else who's doing huge damage on the power play. Like at 5-on-5, Zuccarello's production is actually down kind of substantially, which is, I think, a product of his on-ice shooting percentage being half of what it's been the last couple of years. So I think that's going to bounce back. And meanwhile, on the power play, he has a point every other game, 14 power play points in 28 games for Matt Zuccarello. And I don't know for sure that that's going to slow down. Last year, Zuccarello also had a great year on the power play, 28 power play points in 70 games. So I still see, like, he's on an 85-point pace right now. I see reason to think that Zuccarello still could show more So if you find anyone who is disbelieving in 35-year-old Zuccarello and is like, oh man, I better trade this guy before the wheels fall off, I think he could still match last year's 93-point pace.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, go get Zuccarello, buy high, I guess, and expect him to be even higher. Then like Kaprizov, I guess we don't need to dive into him. Then as far as the cold streaks go on Minnesota, so Frozen Pool is showing Freddie Gaudreau, Jordan Greenway, and Marcus Foligno, who have all been doing nothing lately. But it's an interesting situation because Minnesota has its Streamagami next week, and next week also on the Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for people who are in head-to-head leagues. Check your rosters if you haven't yet, because those are very heavy days. You likely have forwards on your bench on those days, so you could drop. Like I've got 3 LA Kings on my team that I streamed in for this week's couple matchup that all of kind of had nothing weeks except for Kaliev. Now was having a good game today, thankfully, but I added Kaliev, Iafallo, and Velarde at the start of the week, and I have one of them at least on my bench every single day. So there'd be like no reason for me to keep, let's say, Iafallo if I decide he's the lowest one. Like it would be dumb. I'm not even going to play him once next week. I could drop him for any of these Minnesota guys, and I'd get 4 games. I'd add 4 games by dropping Iafallo for a Gaudreau, Greenway, Foligno. So they become interesting, and I think they're going to get added even though they're cold. Brian, if you had to pick one, like if you had to pick one of anyone on Minnesota that's not Zuccarello, Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson-Ek, a forward, who's your pick? Oh,
Okay.
Boldy, obviously not Boldy.
Yeah, no, this one's actually really easy for me. Boldy, by the way, after that valley he was in, has really come back and been like, hey, like I never left. So anybody who missed their opportunity, that window on Boldy is kicking themselves, including me. Sam Steele, Elon. I want Sam Steele.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
fine. He's taken in my couple dips. You can't take
okay.
him.
I thought I had a cheat code here to get past it.
To be fair, he scored a goal in the last game. Before that, he was pointless in 4. He's like one of these guys that's like centering the top line and still has some trouble. But yeah, I'd agree with you. He would be my next choice.
Yeah, and Sam Steele saw over 19 minutes in that game against Vancouver, and that is the second most ice time he's seen all season. Like he's generally held below 17, but now he's seen 19 or more twice in his last 5 games. And Sam Steele's also shooting the puck. He has 17 shots over his last 6 games, which is not too shabby. And he seems to be having a lot of success in the faceoff dot, which is not something we talk about often, but maybe this is just a reason for that ice time to stay high and that he's proving his worth. He has won between 50 and 75% of his draws for most of the last 2 weeks. So a lot of reasons to think that Sam Steele, I don't know.
No, I'm with you, Brian.
How great a player he could be. So okay. I haven't answered your question. You want me to know?
That's fair. Let me just point out with Sam Steele, the interesting question that looms right now is that Ryan Hartman, I think, has started to skate. It'll be really interesting to see if Hartman gets a shot back centering that top line when he comes back, or if Minnesota's happy with Sam Steele. But that'll be a question for a future show. We don't have to dive. To me, it's like a coin flip between those next 3.
There's no right answer between Foligno, Greenway, Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll throw out one other name, Elon Mason Shaw, who we said like a month ago. It's like we're not going to talk about Mason Shaw, but he's not too bad at throwing a couple hits, getting a couple shots, and he had a recent 3-game point streak. He's nowhere on the depth chart, and I think it's just pure chance. It's probably the forward equivalent of Matt Benning here that we're talking about. He's on, he's in the bottom 6, but maybe this is just my way of illustrating that really nobody is doing a whole lot of anything in Minnesota aside from exactly the guys you'd expect. So if you're looking for a deep cut in Minnesota, I don't know what to say other than good luck.
I'd go with Marcus Foligno because he'll give you some hits at least. And I don't know. Over the years, I've found that whenever I play against Marcus Foligno in fantasy, he tends to score a lot of goals against me. So maybe I would just add him just to make sure that my opponent doesn't add him. So I might get up at 3 a.m. this morning and swap him in. We'll see. Because I think he's going to fly off the shelves, even though he hasn't been doing anything all season. Connor Dewar, by the way, another he's got 5 points in the last 5 games. If you want to say no-name guys on Minnesota. But okay, let's go to the next one. What have we done? 3 teams out of 32. So I guess we'll see if we can speed up. Okay, Columbus, who are playing right now. So Erik Karlsson's 24 points in 22 games against the Blue Jackets. The Blue Jackets are right now defeating the LA Kings 5-3 in the third. So Jonathan Quick, man, stink. Like they should just make Phoenix Copley. But anyways, we'll get to LA later, but they should make Phoenix Copley their starting goalie. I think it's clearly the answer. But as far as Columbus goes, so on Frozen Tools, I know what they're going to say. They're going to say Patrick Laine, because I told you on the last episode, right? Patrick Laine is not actually listed there. Well, he should be. He's scoring in every game. He's amazing. Very he came back ready to go. He took a good vacation because he had a bit of a slow start to the season. He's awesome. His line with Gaudreau and Jenner is crushing it. Gaudreau and Jenner, by the way, both on the list here. Gaudreau has now 18 points in his last 13 games, and Boone Jenner has 3 points in his last 3 games. So I feel like this is like very similar to Minnesota, like a really stacked top line. You definitely want the, though I guess Jenner is actually a lot higher than Sam Steele because I think he's going to hold that spot. And he's now up to 21 points in 27 games of the year, 64-point pace. Gaudreau, I don't know. Nothing much. Brian, do you have anything you want to say about these guys? I think the more interesting thing here is the cold streak I'll just mention, and then you can talk about the team overall. Is Korpisalo is on the IR, which means that Elvis Merzlikins is getting defaulted back. I know we had that debate before on if Merzlikins will get the job back from Korpisalo. Now he gets the chance to establish himself. And so, LA just scored again. Oh, come on. Be one of my guys. It's never one of my guys, man. Those 3 stream, Velarde and I followed nothing. What happened to Velarde? He was like a talk of the town at the start of the anyway, whatever. So Merzlikins not having a good game. He's letting now 4 goals on 26 shots. So is the answer for the goalies just probably just you don't want a Columbus goalie? That's
I think so. I think if someone is going to figure it out, it's going to be Merzlikins or maybe Tarasov if he has an opportunity. But yeah, I don't think I really want a Columbus goalie. I mean, you rostered Merzlikins for the first bunch of the season. I've been rostering him over the last few weeks, even through his injury, and I've had about as much fun as you did. So it's a rough time to be a Columbus goalie. But there's a couple interesting names in Columbus, Elon. And the first one who's having a 4-point night tonight is Jack Roslovic. He's got 2 goals on 2 shots tonight. Coming into tonight, he had an assist in 4 of the last 5 games, and also has been making semi-regular appearances on the top power play unit. One of those appearances is tonight, though, and with 2 power play points, you wonder if he can stick. He is playing with Patrick Laine tonight and Igor Chinnikov, but we're not suggesting Chinnikov. So Roslovic is someone who might be worth taking another look at if you're looking for a sort of deeper streamer. And also just a little shout out to Kent Johnson, who is a rookie with Columbus, right? Has a strong pedigree, has looked really strong at times. It was just coming off a nice little run. Then he was pointless in 3, is back on the scoreboard tonight with an assist against LA. He's not getting big minutes, but he is just someone like he's the future. In Columbus, I think it's too soon to jump on unless you're in a super deep league. And then Kirill Marchenko picked up his first career goal tonight against LA. He's playing with Kent Johnson, Cole Sillinger on this like young Columbus line. So there's my little Columbus rundown.
Yeah, Marchenko is definitely going to be someone to watch in the long run, but we'll see how much he can do this year. But that's exciting for him that he got that goal.
I'll add one more because, you're like, do you just not want the goalie in Columbus this year? And the answer is yes. You know who else, like what other person you generally want on a team, but you don't on Columbus?
The top power play quarterback?
Yeah, it's been Marcus Bjork. He has 3 power play points in his last 10 games. And that is like basically all, aside from like a goal and assist, not on the power play. But that's it. That's it for Marcus Bjork. This isn't a guy who's rosterable, and he does so little anywhere else on the score sheet. Big bummer. Fantasy vacuum in Columbus this year.
I mean, I drafted Zach Werenski in a couple. I loved how he had no competition for that top power play. He had to go and get himself injured for the season. So thanks. Marcus Bjork is like a Kalen Addison, basically. Top power play, but an assist every once in a while, and that's it.
Yeah, I'd say even more hopeless than Kalen Addison.
Okay. All right. So we've got now 28 teams to go. We'll see how this goes with Brian. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back, Brian. The team that the Erik Karlsson has been successful against next is the Pittsburgh Penguins, 32 points in 31 games. Too bad he couldn't get a couple more in that playoff series a few years back to get to the conference finals. Over in Pittsburgh, according to Frozen Tools, let's see who's hot here. Brian Rust. Oh my God. We have to talk about Brian Rust every week. Okay, so all of a sudden, Brian Rust, he got bumped from the top power play. That's all he needed. Like now he's got 7 points in his last 4 games. 4 of them came in 1 game against St. Louis. Then he had a multi-point game against Columbus. And then after that, just 1 assist in his next 2 games. But take what you can get, right? I think if anything, to me anyways, I say sell high. Brian's probably going to be like, I believe that this is the start of something. And like, just you're excited if you have him. To me, it's like, I'm so excited to offload him now and get something good in return. That's my opinion.
No, now would be a good time to try and get out under from the risk you carry by holding Brian Rust, because really he needs to get back on that top unit. And if he's not there, I'm gravely concerned. And the fact that like he hasn't been able to be there for so long is pretty rough. And before, like now with that huge St. Louis game, he has 7 points in his last 4 games. But before that, he had just 2 points in the 14 games before that. Yeah, he was shooting poorly. Yeah, his points participation was down. But it's still just like whenever you see a player lose deployment, that's a big red flag. And so if you can, I would be happy to trade Brian Rust for somebody who I could rely on to get me like a 60-point pace. And what you're doing is you're downgrading someone's upside. Like Brian Rust has upside for almost point per game if he's on the top power play and everything's clicking at 5-on-5, which it still could. But if your tummy's turning while you wait for Brian Rust to turn it around, then maybe he has just given you an option to deal him while you can.
Yeah, I would definitely take that opportunity because he's not listed here, but Ricard Raquel, he's taking advantage of his spot on the top power play. I don't think he's going to lose it anytime soon. Then Sidney Crosby's on the list. He's amazing. I guess we can do a little like victory lap for him, like we did for Connor McDavid, but maybe since we're running low on time, we'll just kind of say that we're very excited and happy that we get to live in a world where we get to watch Sidney Crosby still. And Tristan Jarry, good for him. You know, goalies are so hard this year in fantasy, and Jarry, I believe, is one of these guys that started a little bit slow, but he's been awesome lately. 7 wins and 70 quality starts in his last 8 games. That's what you want. So if you got him cheap or whatever, even if you didn't, you just got him the draft for what you thought he should be worth, you're getting your money's worth. So very good. You got the good guys over in Pittsburgh there. And then on the cold streak section, what do we got? Zucker. Oh, so the cold streaks here are interesting on Frozen Tools because they include guys that like aren't fantasy relevant. So we don't need to talk about like Joseph or Marcus Pettersson. But yeah, Jason Zucker is someone who we've generally been into this season. All of a sudden, he's got no points in his last 3 games. And before that, he had a 1 goal, 2 assist game versus St. Louis. And then before that, he was pointless in like 7 games, 6 games.
He's pointed just once in his last 10 games, which is bad news for Jason Zucker. And in the last game, he only played 12 minutes. He still threw 4 hits and registered 4 shots on goal. But I'm watching that ice time. This is 3 consecutive games now that Jason Zucker has not played 15 minutes, even 15 minutes, and which is the low mark basically of what Zucker's been playing all season long. So I'm not sure if this is an injury or a coach displeasure, but we were singing Zucker's praises on an episode not so long ago saying, hey, he's putting up his best expected goals numbers since that season where he really came on the map in Minnesota, which is now 7 or 8 years ago, and said like, hey, maybe this guy is a legit goal scorer in the league. Zucker is looking as threatening as that for the first time since 2017-18 in Minnesota, but has gone really, really quiet lately. And I would like to know more about this. I feel like there is context. If any Pens fans have more beyond what Elon and I have been able to pick up from the score sheets and whatever limited moments we flipped through a Penguins game, could you hit us up at Keeping Karlsson or over on our Patreon, patron only Discord community?
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, he is Jason Zucker, right? So maybe we shouldn't have expected him to.
No, but he's amazing. Better than the Jason Zucker of the past few seasons.
Maybe not.
Well, like, yeah. Okay. Yes. He's still Jason Zucker. Point taken.
Yeah. All right. Next up, the Tampa Bay Lightning, 37 points in 36 games. Erik Karlsson dominated the Lightning over his career, and some other people who have dominated in their career on the Lightning. The 3 hot players are all guys we don't really need to dive into. Andrei Vasilevsky, who also, by the way, was cold for a while at the beginning of the year. But obviously he's like the goalie that you would have been the least surprised to see bounce back. Him and like a Shesterkin type. We had him in tier 1 in Schmorgolisborg at the start of the year for a reason. Steven Stamkos is on fire once again. He sort of started super hot. Then he went cold for like a few games. And I think on the podcast, we were like, obviously don't worry about him. And then Braden Point. Point gets points. There used to be a thing we used to say all the time. Past couple of seasons, he's been a little disappointing, but now he's back to the superstar Braden Point that we grew to know and love. Over a point per game. He's now got 4 points in his last 3 games, over a point per game on the season. I guess the interesting thing on Tampa is more to just look at like who's playing with all these superstars. And lately we've got Killorn and Paul playing with Stamkos, and then Hagel is still with Kucherov in Point. So I guess Hagel, Paul, and Killorn are your like periphery guys that you're potentially interested in. Nicholas Paul's having a pretty good year. By the way, we should point that out.
Only his parents and people reading the lines off Frozen Tools called him Nicholas. Nick Paul it has been doing well. Elon, you said you would trade Nick Paul, like you would prefer Nick Paul to Brian Rust.
Okay, to be fair,
server. I would prefer Brian Rust for what it's worth.
for context, this was the person's like like this is their bottom roster spot. I was saying to drop Rust for Nick Paul, and then if Nick Paul doesn't work out, you have a streaming spot. If the types of people in free agency are the likes of Nick Paul, then maybe you can do better than just not streaming and having Brian Rust in your roster. So I'm not necessarily saying I'd prefer Paul over Rust rest of season, but I don't know. My opinion. I feel like Brian Rust is a sell or at some point a drop. Like Nick Paul is like every game taking like 3 or 4 shots lately. He's playing with Stamkos. He's has a lot more points than Rust so far. Like at some point we just have to start believing that he could do something.
Well, I mean, he's also shooting 22% at all strengths, and some of that is thanks to some power play production that he's managed in very limited power play time. But really, this is a guy like you regress his shooting percentage, and Nick Paul was probably on his expected 40-ish point pace, 40 odd point pace, which even in Rust's worst case scenario, I don't think he hits. So pick up Nick Paul, trade him for Brian Rust.
Okay, I guess. Or just drop Brian Rust and stream in Nick Paul types for the rest of the year. And I think you'll do better. But okay, were we still on? Oh, where were we? Tampa Bay. I said the hot streaks, cold streaks, Ross Colton, Nick Perbix. I guess we could move on. So let's see who's the next player that Erik Karlsson has been successful against. So the next team is the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's actually the team that he has the most points against, but he's also had the most games. 42 points in 43 games for Karlsson against the Leafs. Brian, you already brought up the goalies. We should just mention it. I know Ryan in the Discord's already taken like a huge victory lap about how the Leafs goalies, like anyone who doubted what Dubas was doing, getting Matt Murray, like, eat it, you doubters, because the Leafs have the 2 best goalies in the league. So we'll see. Obviously now it's looking really good. Samsonov had a shutout earlier this week. Matt Murray's been great. Obviously, we need to see if Matt Murray can stay healthy. That's my main concern. I've always been kind of like surprised that Samsonov like fell as far as he did, and like the fact that Washington just waived him. This guy was such a huge pedigree. Like I feel like we were into him for so long. Like he was such a highly heralded prospect, and then like people really gave up on him quickly. Matt Murray. At one point, I still remember a time when we had Cam Robinson on the podcast, and I asked him if you were drafting a dynasty league right now. This is like 5 or 6 years ago, like after like Pittsburgh had just won those cups with Matt Murray. And I asked him, like, who's the goalie that you would draft? And he said Matt Murray is like the number 1 goalie in all of fantasy hockey in terms of like the long-term prospect. So, they've got 2 high pedigree guys. Murray obviously has had quite the story, but for now, I don't know. You can't say anything bad. It's just I'm just worried about his injury risk. It seems like Murray's found himself in terms of just being a good goalie again in Toronto. So that's nice to see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was definitely the narrative going into the game on Saturday night, where he had his worst performance of the year. Like Matt Murray looked like this is the cycle of Matt Murray. You see the best of him, you see the worst of him, he gets injured. Then you see the best of him and then the worst of him, and then he gets injured. So I don't know if we're back in that cycle, but I will say all Leafs goalies this year, including Eric Shalgren, do you know that each one has made 10 appearances this season? They're all playing far above their expected save percentage number, which either tells me Leafs are getting incredible value for each of them, or the Leafs are doing a little something extra to help these guys that isn't showing up in these numbers. Teams all have their own stats, and especially the Leafs. I think they're one of the teams most invested in, collecting and analyzing their own data. So, these guys by the standard conventional measure look like they're performing really, really well. And by the eye test, I think that sort of tracks too. But I also wonder if the Leafs have also figured out another really great strategy to support their goalies that is making them look better than they actually are. But all in all, great news for Toronto, who just needed a goalie. That's all they needed. And now they have 3, all performing really well for them. Way to go.
Yeah. And as far as like, it's impressive that the defense is doing so well. Like you're saying, Brian, considering Morgan Riley has been injured for a while, Rasmus Sandin has stepped up in his absence. He's doing pretty good. He had 2 assists in that game against Calgary, both on the power play. So he's definitely someone that you've probably lost your chance to add him. Brian, I know like you rushed to add him when you saw that Riley was injured. You like told the whole sob story about how you added Giordano and then you ended up dropping him when you saw that it was actually Sandin. But in the end, it worked out. You've got a good top power play quarterback.
That sob story ended with me being like, and Sandin isn't going to do anything now, so I'm going to drop him and I'll have wasted 2. But no, I'm really happy to see Sandin's throwing 2 or 3 hits per night. He sometimes goes shotless, but generally can get you a couple shots a game. And the power play production also hasn't really been there, but a couple goals along the way have helped made up for that. Just 3 power play points in about 11 games since Sandin has been quarterbacking that top unit. So I would love to see more production on the power play, but maybe it'll come with more time spent there. So I'm holding out hope that Sandin is going to continue to be rosterable for as long as Morgan Radley's out.
Yeah, and then the other hot player here that's listed on Frozen Tools for the Leafs is William Nylander, who we haven't really talked about much this year. He's one of these guys, again, set your watch, he's going to be good. So there's not much for us to talk about, but he just had a 5-point game against Calgary. He did the best he could. The Leafs won 5-4. So it was like William Nylander was there for every single goal to help them get that win. He also took 5 shots. He's having an amazing season. He is currently at 33 points in 29 games. This is going to be a career year for him if he keeps this up. I don't see why he wouldn't. I feel like he's sort of overshadowed, being behind Matthews and Marner, of course, and even like Tavares. But Nylander's like a stud. Remember when people were mad about his contract? Looks like such a steal. What is he making? $6 million a year?
Something about Nylander for a very long time. Basically, since he came to Toronto, he was the guy that the laziest media tended to beat up on. And I'm so glad that he's doing well. Of course, you don't hear anyone really singing his praises for that reason. But yeah, he is crushing it. And again, William Nylander, and I think we've mentioned this on the show before, one of the better unsung power play producers too. 31 power play points over 81 games last season. This year, he's doing it again. He's pacing for 37 power play points in addition to some really strong 5-on-5 production. His shooting looks like, maybe he's been a little too successful in shooting so far this year, but I still don't see any reason to disbelieve that William Nylander could be a point per game player. All the while, Elon, you know what I like about William Nylander too? And I think the reason that the laziest media don't, 8 hits through 29 games this year, which means he just needs 11 more to match his full season total from last year.
I thought you were just going to say his hair. That's
good hair, great, rich, luscious hair.
Next up on the list here is the Florida Panthers. Erik Karlsson, 34 points in 35 games against the Thurs, as our short shifts friends like to call them. And they have no one hot right now, unfortunately. Or no, Eric Stahl's on the list. So I don't want to talk about Eric Stahl. I guess
he scored today.
Scored a goal today.
I think that's why he's hot. Like the bar for Eric Stahl to be hot is so low. Although he has 5 points in his last 6 now.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't have. That's cool. Like that's really cool. He's 38 years old.
Do you know his last goal came in April of 2021?
Man,
yeah.
With which team? Probably Montreal, I guess.
Montreal.
Yeah. Man, Eric's still good for him. Okay, I'm really happy for him. I hope that the Panthers go on a run. He gets to be like a Joe Thornton type, I guess. Just like is Joe Thornton? He's not still around anymore, right? I think he's finally out of the league at this point.
Yeah.
If Eric Stahl's around, then I don't know.
I feel like Joe Thornton is like sitting in the stands in Toronto, like Jason Spezza, and just like commenting on things happening, being like an informal player coach or evaluator somewhere.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't mind having Joe Thornton around if I was running a hockey team. On the cold side, here's an interesting one. Brandon Montour, one of the big stories from the start of the year. This guy that, especially when Ekblad was injured, was lighting up the league. He was among the top of defensemen in scoring. He actually still is, but he has 22 points in 27 games. That's a 67-point pace. He's having an amazing season, but he's now pointless in his last 3 games, only 2 assists in his last 7 games. He's still on the top power play, so that's a good spot to be in. But
that is still a good spot to be in. And
I mean, I'm not saying he's like garbage, but he's definitely looking like that 67-point pace is probably gonna fall. I wouldn't be surprised if it falls to more like 50. Like, I don't know. That seems more reasonable to me.
It does seem reasonable. And Montour, he's cooled down with the power play. I think the reason that a lot of Florida is cold is because they were used to scoring a power play goal. They were dry on the power play to start the year, but then they were basically scoring a power play goal every game or averaging a power play goal a game. They just have 5 power play goals now over their last 8 games in 27 opportunities, which, still isn't a terrible conversion rate. But I think we're seeing this show up in everybody's numbers. Also, in general, Florida's had they've had some 5 goals. I was going to say they've had a couple games where they've scored 1 or 2 goals, but they've also scored 5 goals a few times in this stretch. And Brandon Montour just isn't getting in on them. So, we figured that his pace, we did say he was for real, like that he was a legit full season rosterable candidate, especially because he's on that top power play unit. And that doesn't change. but there's just been fewer points to gather, both for him at 5-on-5. He's only gathered power play points. I'm looking back for his last point that didn't come on the power play. It was like 11 or 12 games ago. So this might be why Brandon Montour is struggling to put up points. The power play production is still, the opportunity is still there, but he's not doing anything at any other time, which hopefully he'll start doing that again.
Okay, so we'll see. But I think your time to sell high probably has passed. And now you hang on. I don't know what you get for him. If you get something really good for him, I would definitely consider it. Tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know what your offers are for Brandon Montour. But he's definitely not someone I'm like trying to buy now because he's on a cold streak. That's for sure. Could be wrong. Okay.
No, I'm with you. Like it's always possible that Montour, if he continues, like I'm not sure if he's still being enjoyed at 5-on-5. Like if he's not, if the coach sees reason to take him off the top power play, especially if the power play keeps struggling, like that would be the easiest route to go, right? Okay, let's take off the second defenseman, throw forward on, and that's why Montour's a little vulnerable there.
Mm-hmm. And Florida doesn't have like a shortage of good forwards, right? That they could put like who, like, let me even see, like they're playing right now and they're losing.
They're not they're not as deep. Like that is something we could have easily said in recent years, but they're not as deep. Like if you're calling up a forward from the second unit, you're looking
Sam Bennett, Carter Verhaeghe.
Yeah.
Don't forget Duclair is going to be coming back maybe in January, which is coming up, right? So I think his time may be limited. I think, Brian, you bring up a good point. Yeah, they're not like as deep, like they don't have Huberdeau anymore. But, you know, I'd be worried. I don't know if he's going to be on the top power play all season. So we'll see.
Me neither. Yeah. It's a good time if no one's paying attention to see if you can sell high on him. I wouldn't buy low. I'm not writing him off for the full season. Again, like Montour has looked good and his shots have been higher than ever, except even those are petering out lately as well. So there's just some reasons to think that this guy's coming down to earth.
Get him out. Get him off your team. Okay, for a good return. I mean, okay. Detroit is next. Erik Karlsson has 26 points in 27 games versus the Red Wings. What a stud. Okay, and who's hot on Detroit right now? David Perron and Andrew Kopp. So Perron is someone who I don't even know at this point, Brian. He's like hot, he's cold. The fact that he's hot now almost makes me think he's about to cool off. But like you look at his game log overall, he's had a pretty consistent season, right? He's up to now 21 points in 27 games after getting 4 in his last 4.
And keep in mind,
okay, I will.
Sorry, I just wanted to add, like Perron is a beneficiary of Bertuzzi's injury, right? Like he's been playing up on the top line with Larkin, and well, I guess Lucas Raymond is also like. It's hard to say which guy wouldn't be there otherwise if Bertuzzi was healthy. But it's great for Perron to be playing up there. Also, he's been a fixture on the top power play when we weren't sure if he was going to be this year. That was the big question. Although our answer was, why else would Detroit acquire him other than to put him, like he is a power play weapon and that's what he's good at. So it's great to see that there really doesn't seem to anywhere for him to go outside top line, top power play. And I see what he's doing right now, which is basically a 65-point pace, being fairly sustainable. Like he's doing it the way he usually does. Big power play production and okay 5-on-5 production. Combine those, you've got a good season from him.
Yeah, and he'll probably do a little better on 5-on-5 for however long that he stays on this top line with Larkin. So yeah, you're hoping if you have Perron that just Bertuzzi takes his time in his recovery. Then Andrew Kopp was someone who we called a snoozer at some point. Brian, you were even like, I don't even get why anyone drafted him in the first place. And I remember we had that whole conversation about him. And obviously now he's kind of hot. He's got 4 points in the last 4 games. It's not someone I'm like rushing. Like I'm not tripping over myself to get Andrew Kopp. Like while Perron is getting Larkin and Raymond, Kopp's been playing with Adam Ernie and Oscar Sundqvist, and he's only on the second power play. So I think he's like a decent enough stream when you have space and Detroit has a good schedule, but I'm not like, I'm not expecting Andrew Kopp to be someone who's going to point very often, I guess.
Me too. I'm not rushing to make room for Kopp on my roster. His pattern of scoring lately, while he's been hot, like has been kind of random. Like I can't totally see shooting patterns are scattershot. His points participation seems to be up above 80%, which is like, that's high. I expect that to go down. And like you said, only second power play deployment. So I wouldn't expect Kopp to keep up this run. This does put him overall, like with all this recent production, at about a 52-point pace. Maybe that is close to where he sits full season. But yeah, like that's the big picture, Andrew Kopp, not just the last 6 or 7 games of scoring.
Okay, and then on the cold streak side, Alex Nedeljkovic tops the list here. He's been so terrible. He has played 9 games. He has 2 wins. He's an 880 save percentage. In his last 4 games, he's been like really bad, like 5 goals against, 4 goals against, 4 goals against, like just not a goalie that you can rely on. He's barely playing. My only question here, Brian, is when are they just going to send Nedeljkovic down and bring up Magnus Hellberg to be the rightful backup? Like, it's time for someone else to get waived, and it's time for Hellberg to get a chance. That's all I'm saying. Like, Husso's been good. Like, I'm not saying anything bad about Husso, but Nedeljkovic stinks. Get him out of there.
I wonder if Nedeljkovic was waived, if anybody would bite. He's got, this is the last year of his contract. It's a $3 million cap hit. He's getting paid a little bit more than that. Last year it was the lower end. This year it's the higher end. So I'd be curious, but yeah, Elon, I know how much you want to see Hellberg, and at this point it is worth a shot. Like Nedeljkovic has really fallen as somebody who we thought we could expect to do like
and
pretty
I'm seeing
well.
in the chat here, Ashley is saying that he was called up today, Hellberg.
Oh,
so maybe
why? Do we know?
Probably because Nedeljkovic stinks. It's just like we just started up to date on the news.
I mean, that is a nice assumption to make, but also sometimes there's an injury that leads to these call-ups. But so far, I mean, Nedeljkovic last year wasn't great, but he wasn't terrible. This year he has been terrible, which is bad news for Detroit, bad news for Nedeljkovic. I wonder if, it seems everyone thought there was a really clever cheap bet by Detroit when they signed him. Clearly, it hasn't really turned out the way that they'd hoped. And I'm curious to see what happens to him after this season in free agency. If he gets another kick at the can, he is still young enough, right? He's going to be 27 when this contract expires. So there's still a chance for Nedeljkovic to redeem himself and be someone else's reclamation project. But yeah, I would be, if I'm Detroit and I'm looking to give my backup 1 out of every 3 games, I might be looking to another backup.
Yeah, well, they have someone in the system who just got called up. Brian, so let's say you were to rank 3 disappointing young-ish goalies. How would you rank Nedeljkovic, Kaapo Kähkönen, Cal Peterson?
Well, I think I would sort them by the most disappointing is the one with the highest pedigree, and that's Cal Peterson, who also I think had the clearest path to being a number 1 over the last couple of years, but just couldn't do it. And hopefully he's doing the work on his game that he needs. It's interesting, though, maybe a little telling that 31 other NHL teams are like, nope, not going to trade nothing for this guy, even with his contract, which isn't like hamstringing. And maybe some teams just don't have the space.
No, it's terrible. $5 million a year for a guy who couldn't stop the puck. Come on.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a big risk to take, and maybe he'll prove everyone wrong. But he's been the most disappointing, followed by Nedeljkovic. Who was the third one you said?
Kähkönen.
You're like,
you're thinking like, oh, Kähkönen's not disappointing because I already knew he was bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Shams is, by the way, reminding us that Hellberg was on a conditioning stint, and that's why. So he had to be called up.
Oh, right. He was loaned.
I see. Okay. By the way, Florida, we were talking about them. They're having a bad game against Seattle. It's 5-1 now. I was, what do I don't know anything about goalies, Brian. It's so impossible. Like, I was ranting a little bit in the Discord today, but how did they give Martin Jones the start when like Grubauer has just had a couple of games? Jones has been terrible. Let Grubauer get on a roll here. Like, Seattle's in a playoff spot right now. Why would they be giving away these games? And now look, Martin Jones is having this great game against the Panthers. So he's going to get the win. So good for them. Okay. Next up here, where are we? LA. Oh, good. I wanted to talk about LA. We've already I mentioned Cal Peterson a million times. I want to talk about Phoenix Copley because he's had 2 or 3 good games now. Quick laid an egg again today. I guess the game is still going. The third is almost over. It's 5-5. Velarde still no points, by the way, for anyone keeping track at home. But anyway, at this point, their only goalie that's giving LA consistent good starts, and obviously it's super small sample size, is Phoenix Copley. So I don't know. If your league is super deep, he's someone I would take a look at. Like LA's good. Like if they get good goaltending, they're pretty good.
Yeah, I would say if you missed out on Charlie Lindgren in Washington, who's been doing really well, right? We mentioned him on the show. He had an opportunity. He's really been running with it so far. If you missed out on him and you're looking for a similar opportunity available this week, I think Phoenix Copley could be the guy. I don't know. We have some, we actually have some really dedicated Kings fans in our patron community who are great at like showing us every time they're at a game and then like giving us scouting reports on players that we ask for. And Copley, of course, just hasn't had much of a chance to ever show what he's got, even though he's drafted with some pedigree, but like he's 30 now, right? Like Phoenix Copley is on the other side of his career from when we were first talking about him, with still basically no NHL action to his name, but quick is a low bar to clear. And if he's done well so far, like you said, Elon, if LA can get goaltending, they have a chance to be an actual good team this year. And I don't see why not find out what they've got in Phoenix Copley while they don't have any other goalie to do their job for them.
Yeah, and then back to frozen tools here. LA's got Kopitar and Fiala on hot streaks. That's great. Top line. Kaliev, by the way, is the third on the top line. I'm going to be holding him, Brian. I think I'm going to drop my other two King streamers and Iafallo and Velarde, of course. But Kaliev is interesting because he's playing with these two amazing guys. He's also been really good on the power play this year. So I don't know if there's much to say about Kopitar and Fiala. Like it's amazing that Kopitar's, back up to almost a point per game now after getting 9 points in his last 7. I wouldn't be surprised if he inches back up there. He's now 4 points behind, 27 points in 31 games, and maybe he'll get an overtime goal before we're done talking today. And then Fiala, I mean, so far the Kings can't be complaining with this contract. They signed him obviously to a long-term almost 8 million per year contract. He's over a point per game so far. They sent him down to the third line he produced. Now they brought him up to the top line he's producing. So Fiala, I don't think everyone's happy, and I'm sure everyone in LA is very excited that they're going to have this guy for the long-term stretch.
Yeah, it is great to see Kopitar and Fiala both doing well. Both guys. Sorry, can you hear like the little tune in the background? No, okay.
I didn't hear it.
I'll
both guys.
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to start LA again. Yeah, it's been a good time for LA. When we last talked about Kopitar, he was cold, and I was shrugging my shoulders saying, I don't know if we can expect, the usual 70, 75 point pace from him. Maybe we're downgrading to 65 points this year. And of course, Kopitar has surged back to prove me personally wrong. And then you have Fiala, who is still doing well. He's still not shooting as much as we want. Like, this isn't to say like we're not, everybody who drafted Fiala is just basically breathing like this huge sigh of relief, right? Because this was shaping up to be a really disappointing season for him. And it still kind of is in terms of shot generation. I'd like to see that higher. At the same time, his shooting percentage is still low. Like, there is still room for Fiala to regress and put up even better numbers than he has so far. Just 9 goals through 31 games, despite taking 80 shots. I feel like there is a chance for Fiala to be able to do a little more scoring at 5-on-5 than he's done so far. And I mean, what more is there to say, right? These are two guys who are now doing about what we would have expected coming into the year. Who still isn't?
Kempe.
Yeah.
Shams wanted us to talk about Kempe. I was about to bring him up. So in this game today, he's got a goal. So that's nice. He also scored a goal versus Montreal yesterday. So who knows? Maybe this is the start of something. But overall the season, yeah, definitely a big disappointment. And now he's been on the third line. It's Kaliev on the top line, meaning it's been Kempe playing with, nothing Velarde and Iafallo. So not great deployment. He's still on the top power play for what it's worth. But yeah, he's been a bit of a disappointment, and it's hard to know what he's going to be able to do from just the third line. Though, of course, things could easily change again. Maybe now's a good buy low time, if anything.
Right. But it could be. But just remember, you're buying a 55-point player with not a lot of fat to trim, right? That's what we said the last time we talked about Kempe, which is that he's been really disappointing, and disappointing. There's not a lot of room for Kempe to disappoint us. He's also shooting a lot less. And one of the theories we had was he was deferring more often. Now he's not on the top line, so he shouldn't have to defer anymore. But coming into tonight's game against Columbus, Kempe had just 1 single shot in each of his last 2 games against Montreal and Toronto. So I'd love to see him shoot more. Ideally, he'd score more too. But Kempe's a bit of a risky play if you want to try and. Did you suggest buying low on him?
I guess I did, but at the same time, like if I had him, I'd want to probably just get rid of him.
If I had Kempe, I'd be looking like even more so than Rust, Elon. I would try and find a Kempe believer to sell if they are believing in the 2 goals he scored on his last 4 shots.
Cool. All right, so Brian, we've gone through 10 teams. It's been an hour, so I think it's a good time to take a break, and then we'll go double speed for the rest of the teams in part 2 of this episode. Also, I'm going to be a little distracted. I'm just going to let people know here. Currently, my cupful matchup against Lori, I'm winning 256 to 255. I'm winning by 1 point. There's like a game left, and there's Boston versus Vegas. I've got Logan Thompson, and he's got Linus Ullmark. It might come down to just who wins this game. Oh my God, Brian. But we're still going to be back with, this analysis of these remaining 22 teams that Erik Karlsson has not been as successful against as the ones we've talked about so far. So it's going to be a really fun next hour. So definitely go and download part 2. It should already be waiting for you. If you don't know where to get it, that means you didn't subscribe to our podcast correctly. So please go do that. That actually helps us out a lot. Sometimes people ask, like, how can we help the podcast? Like, go actually subscribe and make your podcast player like auto download. That's how we get credit from our bosses over in Blue Wire. So yeah, Spotify, wherever, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast, subscribe to Keeping Karlsson, and we'll be back at you with part 2 just a moment. Well, whenever you decide to listen to it, but Brian and I will be recording it in just a moment. Bye. Okay.
We really, we got to pick it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. Just quick
Okay.
answers. Okay. And I'll do quick questions. I will. Yes, welcome back, everybody, to part 2 of the December 11th edition of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We are in Toronto. It was a snowy day today, but we still were able to settle in, get that hot cup of cocoa, and discuss what's going on in the world of fantasy hockey. I am your host and your guide for this exploration around the league, Elon Dubrovsky, and joining me, of course, Brian Com for part 2, as we're going to talk about 22 teams in 1 hour. That's the plan that Erik Karlsson has had some success against to varying degrees. So Brian, let's get right back into it. I guess I should throw to you to say hello, at least for people who maybe haven't listened to part 1 in a while. Brian is actually here, I promise. Hey, Brian.
Hi, I'm here, confirmed, and we have a lot to get to, Elon. I don't know what you think we can
we can do this.
Okay, let's
try.
Try.
All right, we're going to New Jersey next. Okay, step 1, I'm not going to give the stats anymore of how Karlsson has done against these teams, but we can share this with the patrons afterwards of this spreadsheet. But okay, we're going to New Jersey. Who's hot? Jack Hughes is hot. Not surprised. Jesper Bratt is hot. Not surprised. Akira Schmid has been really great in a backup role with Blackwood injured. Schmid has 4 wins in his last 5 games, and 4 of those are quality starts. And Vanacek just got blown up in that last game. So I wonder if Schmid gets a shot. Well, New Jersey plays Monday, Tuesday next week. So definitely as a streamer, if you can fit him in. Akira Schmid seems to be really good. And I thought that the whole story was that Nico Dawes was like the future goalie in New Jersey. But now it's going to be interesting. So for you dynasty heads, I'd actually be curious to get people's opinions on, is it Schmid or Nico Dawes that's going to eventually come in and be the next goalie for this team after Vanacek and Blackwood are done. Schmid only 22 years old and looking really good. I don't know. Anything to say here, Brian? Blackwood has been skating also, so it's possible that Schmid gets sent down again. New Jersey's probably going to win no matter who their goalie is because they're just so stacked.
That's definitely a big part of it, of why Schmid is racking up wins, but he's also played really, really well. Like, this is not to take anything away from him. I don't know, Elon, my takeaway is that New Jersey does not need Mackenzie Blackwood, like, at all. Yeah. Right? Between Vanacek and Schmid, I'm sure the two of them can hold it down. I mean, this is, of course, small sample, but Vanacek has, he's looked capable this year, which is about what we'd expect him to be, like a little bit above his expected numbers, which is great because New Jersey doesn't need a goalie to win them games, but it helps if they don't lose them games, which is not what Mackenzie Blackwood has been able to accomplish for them in recent years. So yeah, I think maybe that's the takeaway for New Jersey, although I think Blackwood was already on the outs with the organization, but now perhaps even more so.
Yeah, I mean, he had an opportunity to start the year, but he can't stay healthy. And that's too bad. Maybe he'll do well somewhere else. Cold players on New Jersey, according to Frozen Tools, we've got Severson, who's been cold all year. Alex Holtz, Sharon Govich. I mean, Sharon Govich at one point was playing with Jack Hughes, like last season especially, and was doing really well. But now the lines have been pretty secure for a while now. Tatar, Hischier, Bratt, and then Mercer, Hughes, and Eric Haula. So those are the only forwards that you should be interested to varying degrees in New Jersey. The rest, like a Sharon Govich, obviously we're going to forget about. All right, next up, Brian, the Buffalo Sabres. And that is a team that has one guy that everyone knows about in Tage Thompson, who just wins weeks for you if you have him in fantasy. Like, that game versus Columbus was just insane. 5 goals, 1 assist, 9 shots. What's more to say? They covered it on short shifts. After that, he only had a measly assist versus Pittsburgh. It's becoming disappointing when you only get a point from Tage Thompson. I don't know. He's got 41 points in 28 games on the year. I'm very excited to see what he's going to do the rest of the way. I don't really know. There's not advice to give, right? In that line, he's playing with Skinner, who's injured or suspended now. That's very annoying. It was a stupid thing he did, just cross check for no reason. Doesn't care about my fantasy team. It would be nice if Yahoo. Why can't Yahoo just let us put it? I've already discussed this before. I think it's unfair that Yahoo doesn't let us put suspended players in. I didn't cross check anybody. Okay, so why am I being punished? Just let me stash him in IR and at least fill the spot. I've already lost Jeff Skinner. I'm getting punished enough. I traded Patrick Laine to get this guy. Anyway. That's annoying. But so what? I guess we should look at the lines, right? With Skinner out, they lost today or yesterday, and Tage Thompson didn't get a point. I guess
but
it was
6 shots. Like he's still like Tage Thompson. It is
He's very
very
good.
rare that he doesn't get 3 shots, and it's actually kind of rare he doesn't get 4 shots. It's actually kind of rare that Tage Thompson doesn't get 6 shots.
He's
on
very
net.
good. Yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
So I was just going to point out, yeah, the Casey Middlestat was playing with Thompson and Alex Tuck, so maybe that'll hold for Tuesday and Thursday. But those are like busy days next week, so before you go rush to grab Casey Middlestat for those 2 games, keep in mind that you might want to check to make sure you have a roster spot for him. But yeah, I guess on cold streaks, I don't know. Owen Power is cold, but I guess we've already discussed how he's just someone that's just not going to do it this year. Paterka is someone that second line with Quinn, Cousins, and Paterka were looking really good a couple of weeks ago when Buffalo had a good schedule. And then anyone who rushed to grab Paterka, I believe, Brian, you were one of them, very disappointed probably in the results. He's pointless in his last 3. I'd imagine you've dropped him by now.
Yeah, he's long gone. And like I'm gonna need some time to recover before I try. But like adding him instead of someone else, I made a couple terrible ads this week that basically ended my chances to win my own kick-up full matchup. Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, kkupfl.com for more info. So yeah, that really hurts. It's gonna be hard. Like I don't know how in a game with so many goals and where there's so much offense happening around you, JJ Paterka, you did nothing. It was very disappointing. Really? Elon, I thought you were going to ask me if Tage Thompson can keep up his 120-point pace.
I mean, probably not. Like, but probably he could be 100. Like, I don't know. He seems like really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think 100-point pace is definitely in the cards. Like I'm looking through all the numbers I usually do, and I'm not seeing, like I'm seeing high production, but it's backed up by highly sustainable numbers. Like, yeah, his points participation is a little high at 5-on-5, but his shot rates are just so insane, and he's shooting from such dangerous territory. Like he's shooting 21% on the power play. That can keep up. He's shooting 14% at even strength. That can keep up. His teammates around him are shooting at a pretty reasonable rate. Like if you take 130 shots and you're converting in what seems to be a sustainable way on 16% of them, there's a good chance Tage Thompson can keep this up. Do you know he's already past half? Sorry. Did you know Tage Thompson already has more than half the total shots that he took last season? Last season, he took 253 shots in 78 games. This year, 130 shots in 28 games. These are like Alex Ovechkin shot-taking numbers. This guy is prolific. And I don't know, Elon, I'm not even ruling out 120 points.
Well, look,
possible pace here.
Like he just has these crazy. This isn't the first time he's done this. Like had like a 4 or 5 goal game. So he could continue to give you like solid production, and then once every like month he'll win you a week in a single game. So if he can keep this up, yeah, he could be one of the top guys in fantasy. It's amazing. Okay, next up we're gonna go to Colorado here, and Erik Karlsson 0.81 points per game against Colorado. So we're starting to get to teams where he hasn't been as amazing against. The Avs have been hurting a lot in terms of the injury front. They've lost Nathan McKinnon for like a month, so that really sucks. But they still won today against St. Louis thanks to Mikko Rantanen scoring all 3 of the goals. And they've also got some reinforcements back. Nichushkin is back, Lehkonen is back. They formed the top line, and so obviously those are the 3 that you're like going to be especially interested in. Then you've got your like JT Compher and your like Alex Newhooks, who both had assists today. But they become less and less interesting as more people come back. Like Rodriguez, I saw, is like going to be coming back soon, so maybe like Compher or Newhook gets bumped from the top power play again, I'd imagine, right? Like if you look at the Colorado lines in the last game, I already told you that the top line was, Rantanen, Nichushkin, and Lehkonen, and then the top power play was Nichushkin, Rantanen, Lehkonen, and JT Compher. So we've already seen, who was I talking about again? Oh, we've already seen Alex Newhook lose like any of that interesting deployment, and like Compher probably will lose it soon also. So we're kind of back to where we were before with Colorado, just minus, Nate McKinnon but plus like Nichushkin back. So there we are.
That's it. That really is all there is to it. All these guys in Colorado that we were hoping to see more from. Yeah, as you said, Elon, the cast of characters is shifting often enough that an opportunity one game for any of them doesn't necessarily mean they're still going to have that opportunity the next game. And I think most of us are like the most disappointed with Alex Newhook, having the pedigree that he has, right? He was a 16th overall pick back in 2019. So a first rounder, and was able, like, he was okay, but he took 1 shot over 3 games, which wasn't great. And then he had 2 assists to go with them, but it's not enough. Like these are like Alex Kerfoot, Colorado or Toronto numbers. And we just wanted to see more.
Yeah. That's a shame. Also, like Patty wanted us to talk about Devon Taves on D, like who's having like a fine season. He's got like a 55-point pace now. But last year he had a 71-point pace. I think we've already kind of discussed, and I think you could summarize this well on our Discord. Like this is good, and like maybe you shouldn't expect anything more. Like if you're not happy with what he's doing now, probably that's too bad. Like you're not going to get more, but you should like obviously it's still like a really valuable person in fantasy.
Sorry, can you just say the name again?
Devon Taves.
Oh yeah. Like I remembered the conversation, but I missed the name. Sorry. Just give me a sec. Yeah, last year Taves had 12 power play points in 66 games from the second unit. This year it's like a more reasonable 2 power play points in 24 games from the second unit. So that's one reason why Devon Taves isn't doing as great. And I know that doesn't sound like a big difference, but at this point in the season, it kind of is the difference between a 70-point pace and a 55-point pace. The other place to look for Taves to see what's going on while he's on the ice is at 5-on-5. The Avs have not been as strong offensively with him on the ice, but in their expected number and definitely not in their actual number. They're shooting barely 6% with Taves on the ice. So there is room to bump him up a little bit just based on expecting that regresses. But I think a part of that is because of how many injuries there have been in Colorado and how there hasn't been too much of a second line for a while. And maybe he's not out enough with the first line to be able to cash in on enough of what they're doing. So a healthier Avs team will be better for Devon Taves. I think he's still going to finish above his current 55-point pace, but I think he's going to fall short of that 70-point pace from last year.
Yeah, I think right around 55 seems pretty reasonable to me. I don't even think he's going to go too much higher. But I guess we'll see. Obviously, it'll depend on the Avs' health.
Like I'll take the over.
Okay. Next up, we've got the Montreal Canadiens, who lost to LA 4-2 yesterday, and they like switched up their lines going into the game. I was like, oh no, Kirby Doc, you're going back to center a line. And then they had Josh Anderson on the top line that lasted like a period, I think, maybe 2. And then they switched back. So who knows now what's going to happen for Montreal when they play their next game tomorrow on Monday. In the meantime, looking at the hot and colds here, Suzuki and Caulfield, always hot. So that's not a surprise. Christian Dvorak is on the list. I guess he's their other center that's been playing on a line with Dadonov and then Mike Hoffman, who came back from injury. So 3 points his last 3 games, but before that he was doing nothing.
I gotta be like, I'm bored. Like I know this is our show and I shouldn't be,
bored,
but like,
well, I'm trying to bring the enthusiasm with my voice, even if the content isn't interesting.
No, and you're doing the best you can with this material, but there's only so many times I can hear about Montreal Canadiens, Christian Dvorak, and Mike Hoffman, and already I'm tired of Montreal Canadian Evgeny Dadonov. Like, there's just not a whole lot.
All right. Well, I think
to sink our teeth into there.
Well, Kirby Doc is the interesting one, just because he was like so good for a while, and now he's gone pretty cold, right? Like he had an assist a couple games ago, but we're looking at like an assist every couple games at this point over the last stretch. So maybe we're getting to it now that we're seeing also that Martin St. Louis isn't even like so locked in on him staying on the top line. Maybe he will be, but we saw him falter or waver a little bit. So I don't know. I think that you could probably drop Kirby Doc in your deeper leagues. I'm not saying he's nothing, but he's also hasn't been shooting that much lately. So definitely a lot less interesting than he was a month ago.
You can definitely drop Doc in your shallower leagues. In your deeper leagues, I would still hang on to him because he is still playing with Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield at 5-on-5.
Well, like I said, Brian, he was last game.
I know he spent a game away from them, but he's back.
He played. Yeah. Anyway, he's half of the game last game. That's what I said. The whole thing. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, good. Okay.
Have you noticed in Montreal, there's no, they went 5 forwards for a bunch last game?
Let's do it on the show. Okay.
That was for the show.
Oh, yeah, Brian, I have. I think Mike Matheson had been doing pretty good, but he missed the last game with an injury. We actually had a question about Mike Matheson. So, but yeah, while he's out, they're not. It seems like they're going to go back to what they were doing when Matheson was hurt before, which was they're not putting a Caden Gooley or an Arbor check guy or whatever on the top power play. They're going 5 forwards. I'm not sure exactly what the extent is of this Matheson injury. I don't think it's too long. Trev wanted us to talk about him, asking if like his 55-point pace with peripherals is sustainable. I mean, it's only 5 points in 9 games, so it's kind of hard to discuss if that's like sustainable or not. It's already fallen out a 46-point pace, but he is like their top power play defenseman. So I'd be interested in him if he fell into cupful to me.
Yeah, I think 55 points is probably a little high given what we think we can expect from this Montreal team, but I think is currently on a 46 point pace because of that. Well, yeah, that point or but he's currently on a 46 point pace, and I think that is that seems right. Like he doesn't seem like he's really overperforming anywhere. Maybe participating a little too much in what's going on at 5-on-5. Limited power play production so far, 2 power play points in 9 games. Like I could see this being like a Nick Leddy on Long Island situation, but maybe a little better because at least Maxson is taking almost 2.5 shots per game.
Okay, next up is the Dallas Stars, and we have Jamie Benn in the cold streak section. The hot, we've got Miro Heiskanen, not surprising. Cold, Dellandrea, Gurianov, and Jamie Benn over on Frozen Tools. And Ben is the one who was like so good for so long. He's getting all those points on the power play. It's kind of cooled off now. He's still almost at a point per game on the year. He's 27 points in 28 games, but now in his last 5 games, only a goal, though it was a goal in the last game. And generally the rule of the fantasy hockey podcasting is you don't call a guy who just scored cold. Maybe it's the start of something, a power play goal, but I think you said before, Brian, that if he's not getting points in the power play, like that's the only place where he's going to produce. And it seems like he's like cooled off there a little bit. So I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Jamie Benn is still putting up some decent shot numbers overall. Like he's got 17 shots in his last 5 games, which is more than we're used to expecting from Jamie Benn over the last few seasons. And what I've said is borne out. Like most of his production has still come on the power play. Not much is happening at 5-on-5, but he's still getting good looks on the power play. So that's enough reason to keep him in like a deeper league. Elon, I have a question for you. Would you prefer to continue rostering Kirby Dach or Jamie Benn?
Give me Ben, I think, at this point. I like more shots. That power play has a bit more teeth with Jason Robertson. So yeah, I'll take Ben.
Yeah, I think Ben, at least you're guaranteeing something in the shots column, which Dach can't. I think points upside is higher for Dach the rest of the year. But if you want to try and like temper your expectations, but get something a little more certain, I can see why you might prefer Jamie Benn.
Yeah, I mean, he's got like a point per game on the season. Like I said, even with this cold streak, I'm not saying he's going to be point per game rest of the way, but I could see him getting a solid 60 point pace. He also throws some hits. Actually, he's kind of slowed down on the hits. He used to be a big hitter anyways. I guess he is 33 and he's maybe trying to find a different way to play so that he could sustain his career a bit longer. Next up, we are going to the Calgary Flames, Brian, who the hot players, I'm sure Flames fans are very excited to see that Jonathan Huberdeau, Elias Lindholm, and Nazem Kadri are the 3 hot players listed, the players who should be hot because they're the players that if Calgary is going to be successful, they're going to need those guys to be hot. And so good for them. Huberdeau, especially, it's nice to see, he's got now 4 points in his last 4 games, still well below point per game. So like still like well below expectations if you drafted him, and it's like all assists, like barely shooting. So it's not great. Like he's kind of like a Rob Thomas a little bit this year, which you don't really want to see from a guy you drafted probably in the 2nd round. No shade on Rob Thomas, but for fantasy, you kind of want someone who's going to shoot, maybe score a goal every once in a while. But anyways, he's starting to point things in the right direction.
Sorry, can I interrupt you?
Yeah, please.
This is off mic. I feel like you're not saying the player's name at all. Like it's a lot of he. And the feedback we've gotten.
You didn't have to interrupt the sentence. Then now I'm like in the middle of a sentence.
Okay. Sorry. Well, I thought it would be good because it's anyone who's been listening for a minute doesn't know who you're talking about.
Okay. So I'll start the whole thing over again. All right, next up, let's go to the Calgary Flames here. We've got the guys who are hot are the ones that we're happy to see that they're hot. Nazem Kadri, Elias Lindholm, Jonathan Huberdeau are the ones listed on Frozen Tools. I'm sure Flames fans are just happy to know that they've got the players that they were expected to do well or doing well, which was not something that you could say at the start of the year. Kadri was good at the start of the year, then it was cold. Now he's doing well again. I think the most interesting name here is Jonathan Huberdeau, just because he had that really disappointing start to the season. And yeah, he's hot technically, 4 points in his last 4 games, but we're looking at all like assists lately. I'm talking about Huberdeau. So it's 4 assists in his last 4 games, not that many shots. Huberdeau's starting to look a little bit like a Rob Thomas almost, in like it's basically assists or nothing, which is not what you want to see from someone that you drafted in your 1st or 2nd round of your league. So while it is nice to see him getting some points, still, I don't know. I'm still pretty disappointed if I drafted him super high, but at least you didn't draft Mackenzie Weegar super high, unless you did, in which case you're really disappointed because he's a total snoozer at this point.
This is a trade away opportunity for Jonathan Huberdeau for sure. There is a chance that he can be his former self, but last game he played only 15 minutes. And then on top of that, he's only taken 6 shots over his last 6 games. This is someone who averaged 3 shots per game last season, and like went in the like Huberdeau was not always a huge shooter. Like he sort of ebbed and flowed, but this is like a double or triple ebb. If for Huberdeau's shot taking, this is much more than we'd want to see from him. And the fact that we are past the quarter mark of the season and it hasn't come back, I know the sunk cost fallacy is really, really active here, because they're like, okay, well, I've held him this long, I've made it this far, and I would just be trying to get rid of him. I don't want, like, maybe he'll figure it out by game 40 or 50, but at that point, what have you been missing out for another 15 games until that moment? And of course, he'll make a big fool of me if Huberdeau turns it around before then. But just the fact that the shots aren't coming. This is a guy who scored 30 goals last year, and so far he is on pace for like 15 in a good scenario. So I'm really still not liking what I'm seeing from Huberdeau, even though the points start coming. They're not coming in like a strong way. They're coming in sort of mercifully, but not with any kind of authority.
Yeah. And by the way, another player that's not hot right now is Jacob Markstrom, who the Stripeless Zebra on our Discord wanted us to bring up, how he's leading the league in goals against on the first shot of the game. He's up to 6 now, which is not what you want to like. That must be very deflating. I would be very annoyed if I added a goalie and then like, he's streaming a goalie. You're all excited to see how he's going to do. Then right away, like a goal against. That used to happen to me with like Philip Grubauer every time I brought him in.
Yeah, he's been the king of first shot goals against while he's been in Seattle. I mean, the thing that Markstrom's been bad, and it is super deflating. It's a terrible way to start a game for you personally and for your team. The only thing that Markstrom has going for him right now is that Vladar has put in 3 consecutive starts that have all been or bad. He stopped 18 of 20 against Arizona for the win. That's a 900 save percentage, an 893, but still won against Minnesota, and then lost to Toronto with an 853 in that game where he and Matt Murray both let in some questionable goals on their ends. So we had Mason in our Discord server, by the way, Twitterless Mason, who was mentioning, I couldn't tell how cheeky he was being, but he's like, well, a lot of the goals that Vladar gave up, a bunch were on the power play and also in overtime. So even though he has an 853 on the night, it's not so bad if you don't count those, which is what, Brian and Elon tell us to do. Like forget what's happening on the like when you're shorthanded or at 3-on-3 and focus on what's happening at 5-on-5, which still holds true, right? That's the most common game state. If your goalie's not playing well at 5-on-5, well, that's really unfortunate. Like, even if they're great shorthanded, you're at 5-on-5 for like 80% of the game, at least in most nights. So that's why we still look at these 5-on-5 numbers. It's also the biggest sample we have to actually gain useful data from. So Vladar at he's playing at about his expected level now after these most recent outings, and Markstrom is playing a little bit below that. Neither one has been particularly good, but I'll also add neither one has been particularly awful at 5-on-5, which is, again, Markstrom's saving grace. He hasn't been that bad. Vladar hasn't been that good. The door is still open, but he's got to make that first save.
Yeah, definitely. I think that at this point, maybe like it'll be 50-50 the rest of the way. Like, you're not excited about Markstrom, and maybe you're excited about Vladar just because you maybe got him out of free agency and it was hard to find goalies in your league. All right, so next up we're going to the New York Islanders, who, of course, who's hot? Brock Nelson, because he's amazing. He's the least respected, best player in the league. Or maybe I can say the most underrated is the common way to say it. He's up to 28 points in 29 games. This current streak is 8 points in his last 8. I'm not surprised. Brian, are you surprised? I'm not surprised. He's taking a ton of shots. He's doing what Brock Nelson always does, and no one cares.
I'm a little surprised because we've pointed out that he seems to be scoring a little bit over his head.
You have.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan. I don't want to be lumped into the group that's been pointing out that he's doing anything unsustainable. Like, he just seems to do it every year. Hey, 40 goals last year.
I have enjoyed Brock as a really steady guy. And that's what Nelson has been over the last several years, except for the one down year in 2020, 2021. But outside of that, like, he shot 22% last year, paced for basically 40 goals. And yeah, sue me for not expecting him to do the same. This year, his shooting percentage has regressed, and he is still actually on pace for 40 goals. So that is a promising sign for Brock Nelson. That's come because he has upped his shooting, his shot rates at 5-on-5 and on the power play. Nelson already has 3 power play goals over 29 games, which just basically means he's pacing for the same 11 that he was last season. But again, some extra shots are helping him on his way to this 80 points, which is a better way to these 80 points than the path he was on last year for 70 points. Can Brock Nelson actually get to 80? I'm a little skeptical, Elon. I think 70 points is pretty good. That's still about where I'd have him, but it's been like we've mentioned, a much more offensive season overall in Long Island this year. And I'm not unhappy to see Brock Nelson doing what he's doing.
Yeah. And he's only 69% rostered on Yahoo right now, which to me is just like, I don't know. I don't know what he has to do.
That's 31% leagues inactive, right? Like there's some guys you can just tell, like they help you know how many Yahoo leagues have a full set of active managers.
Yeah. If you're in a league and Nelson isn't rostered, I'd love for you to tweet at us and show us your team. Like we do get people who tweeted us with like, I don't know, their team is like stacked with so many stars. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I can't see anyone to drop for Brock Nelson, but that would have to be a really shallow league. Brian, as far as the cold streaks go over on the Islanders, it's no one too, I guess, like surprising here. Ryan Pulock, who again, I got him all season except for that one game where he had 4 assists. I dropped him for that game. Then, I added him back afterwards, and now I've just dropped him today. So he'll probably get 4 assists in his next game. So watch out for Ryan Pulock in his next big game. But aside from that, I think we can move on to the Arizona Coyotes, who are playing right now, and they're currently tied 3-3 with Philadelphia. So, and like one of their players that was kind of cold was Clayton Keller. And actually another one was Nick Schmaltz. And we've had some questions in our Discord of people wanting us to talk about these guys. But looks like, at least for today, Keller has a couple goals. Schmaltz has an assist. So who knows, maybe things are starting to turn around. Also, a guy I just dropped. This always happens. This is like a standard in fantasy, right? I had JJ Moser for the last couple of weeks. I added him. He was on a hot streak. I added him. Then he did nothing. And now I dropped him today, and he has 2 assists today, of course. So, what are you going to do here? JJ Moser, are we back to be, it was Clayton Keller scored a power play goal assisted by Moser and Richie. I think if I'm reading Frozen Tools correctly, I believe JJ Moser has been on the power play, like on the top power play with Richie, Schmaltz, Keller, and Barrett Hayden. Then it's been Gostisbehere and Chychrun on the other power play. That's surprising. So maybe I gave up too early on JJ Moser.
We'll find out, I guess, based on the power play configurations going forward. I'm surprised. Like, I wouldn't have said you gave up too early on JJ Moser, because I wouldn't have expected him to be ahead of both Gostisbehere and Jacob Chychrun, especially when, like, my guess would be, oh, well, maybe Carolina's playing 2 units evenly and they want that second unit to be as threatening as the first. No, that first unit with JJ Moser is seeing 72% share of the team's power play minutes so far tonight. So that's a strange development. And
but in other games, I think it's been more even. Like, I think maybe today is just an odd one, because like Chychrun and Gostisbehere are actually on the hot list on Frozen Tools. Like, they've both been really good. Like, no points today so far, but before today, they've both been doing really well.
And Arizona, I mean, I think the power play deployment has been closer to equal over the last couple of games, but still there seems to be a clear top one. And so it's interesting that today it's Moser on it. Did you ask me about another? Oh, no, you just asked me in general, right? Like, one thing I wanted to say about the Coyotes is that, remember at the start of the season, we mentioned this road trip from hell that they're on. The Coyotes have played 5 games at home, which like isn't even really home, but it's home, and 20 games on the road. Their schedule coming up sees them in San Jose on the 13th. So that's Tuesday. And then they are at home a lot for the next little while. And back at the start of the season, we said mid-December might be a window for you to buy low on Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz and any Arizona Coyote that looked promising, but hasn't been, because they are basically constantly traveling and probably pretty tired. So I would hope for better days ahead for all the Coyotes. That said, it's hard to tell how much better, because, I can't really separate out with just a small sample of home games how much of the Coyote struggle has been because of this road trip and how much has been because they are just so freaking thin top to bottom. Like, Clayton Keller hasn't looked great this year. We were asked to talk about him. Yeah, he's not doing the things that I wanted him to keep doing that seemed really promising from last year. But again, how much of that is his fault and how much of it is the schedule? Don't know. We're about to find out. But if you wanted to take a chance, this could be a good moment to try and get in on those Coyotes.
Yeah, and Andrea's saying maybe we're too late because Keller has 2 goals today. But I almost wonder if like now's the time to strike. I'm just thinking psychologically, if you go to the Keller manager when he's doing nothing, maybe they're like, oh, what do you have up your sleeve here? Do you know something I don't? But now if you go, it's like, oh, the person's like, oh, look at you, look at this dummy. Like he has 1 good game, and now this person's coming to me and being like, they think that he's good again. Like, fine, take him. Yeah, he's not going to score 2 goals every game. But Brian's giving a reason why maybe he will be good again now that they get to play some games at home. They're not traveling all the time. So yeah, interesting. It'll be fun to see what happens in Arizona moving forward. All right, Brian, we've got, I don't know, handful of teams left, like 10, 12 teams to go. Let's take a quick break, and then we'll get to them having a blast here, talking through all the teams with you. And hopefully everyone listening, it feels the same. And we'll continue it in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. All right, we are back, Brian. Next up on the list of teams that Erik Karlsson has done well against, we're at the Winnipeg Jets, who he has 20 points in 27 games. Once again, we're going to share this spreadsheet with the patrons so they can see who Karlsson has been the best and worst against. But yeah, I guess we're getting to the lower end here. Maybe Karlsson hasn't had too much success against Connor Hellebuck. Not many teams have this season. Hellebuck's having a great year. As far as the frozen tools, hot and cold, I'm seeing that Winnipeg has Connor Hellebuck obviously on the list. Then we've got Kyle Connor and Josh Morrissey. Man, Josh Morrissey just keeps going. I know he has another point today. Winnipeg's currently in a game against Washington. Morrissey is up to 31 points in 27 games now. I think we talked about him last week, and like he just keeps producing. Like at some point, we're just gonna have to accept that this is him, right? Maybe not like point per game the rest of the way, but at least like 70. Like I don't know. He's really relished this role as the top power play court. It's wild. It was just a couple of years ago that everyone was all excited about Neil Pionk and what his upside was going to be, and like he's pretty much disappeared, and it's been all Morrissey ever since.
I'm bought in on Josh Morrissey. I think, and it's not so much from what I see in his numbers, but what I've read about what he's changed about his game and the player he wants to grow into. There's been a lot of talk, and of course, it's easy to write that narrative and buy into it when things are going as well as they are. But Morrissey at 5-on-5, like he's probably doing a little better than he should, because the Jets are shooting almost 12% with him on the ice, which has never happened. And I'm not sure that it's sustainable this time around. But the guy where he's really crushing it is on the power play. 11 power play points in 27 games. For reference, his previous career high, 15 power play points for Josh Morrissey, and it took him 79 games to get there. So 4 more power play points, and he will have set a career high in that. And he'll have set a career high in that category. How's he doing it? He's doing it by, honestly, just being there. He's doing like he's getting more deployment, a greater share of his team's power play minutes than he has in the past. But he's not shooting more. He's not doing anything really significant or substantial. I think he's just spending more time on the ice and has done a better job playing his role. I wonder if there is room for him to even have been doing a touch better on the power play than he has already. But it's been a really successful season. Like Josh Morrissey, I think the bottom line here is that he's established himself as a top power play quarterback. Definitely not expecting a 94-point pace, but I'm also not seeing a ton of places where he's going to regress. So he's someone I'm really, I've been cool on Morrissey for a long time. He was supposed to come in and do this from the start of his career. Morrissey's 27 years old now, and he's just getting around to it now, which is great. And 94 points is too high, but I'm curious to see. I'm open to him sort of setting that new sort of watermark that we can expect for him to get. And I wouldn't be so surprised to see it fall around. I don't know, Elon. I don't know if you're going to tell me if this is too low or high, but I'm going to say 60 points.
Yeah, I'd say higher. But yeah, definitely at least that, I think. So I think we're in agreement. He's looking really good. And on the flip side, Neil Pionk, actually, I should mention, because he's actually on the list of cold players here. And he started the year pretty good. Like it was looking like he was going to have a bit of a bounce back, but he's totally fallen off. Only 2 points in his last 12 games. So I'd imagine in deeper leagues. And oh, by the way, no hits lately. Like he used to at least be good for those peripherals, but he's barely hitting. He's getting you some blocks at least. But yeah, in your deeper leagues, also no shots lately. Yeah. So I can't get the words out because I keep seeing more things that are disappointing about Neil Pionk. But Brian, looks like a snoozer here if anyone has him in not like the deepest of leagues.
Yeah, easy. Unless his couple blocks a night are helping you. Neil Pionk isn't shooting, he's not scoring, he's not seeing substantial power play time. You can forget him. He's basically on pace to do what he did last season, which was 36 points in 77. He's actually on pace to do exactly what he did last year when Pionk had 36 points over. Nope. Pionk is pretty much on pace to do what he did last season, where he had 34 points in 77 games. nothing really looks different. And it is unfortunate, Elon, that, that early promise has dissipated. But I think this is who Neil Pionk is now, especially without top power play deployment, 35 points, maybe a couple shots, but not providing value anywhere else.
Yeah. Okay. So next up, we're going to the Chicago Blackhawks, who are going to get some reinforcements. Apparently, Petr Mrazek's going to be back on Tuesday. I really thought when he got injured, like, okay, forget him for like a month or two. So good for him that he's actually going to be healthy. I guess we'll actually see if he gets into this game on Tuesday. But yeah, I thought Soderblom was just going to get a run of starts with Mrazek hurt, but it looks like he's back. So that's good. As far as players who are hot on Chicago, according to Frozen Tools, none. They just say none. So I guess that makes our job easy. As far as cold players go, Max Domi's on the list. He's someone who was hot at one point, but I guess the whole team has just kind of cooled off a little bit over these last 3 games. So yeah, there's just no one interesting on Chicago right now. We're still waiting to see if Patrick Kane gets traded at some point.
Yeah, Chicago has been shut out by a combined score of 9-1 over their last 3 games. That'll douse any kind of excitement you might have had for any of those guys, including Max Domi, who, maybe we saw some sunlight there. Maybe there's a way that Max Domi can continue to produce. He's still on the top power play as of the most recent game. Taylor Radish is also there too, with Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, but Patrick Kane is the only one I'm really interested in rostering. I was actually looking at adding a Chicago player for next week because they play 4 times, twice on Friday and Sunday. So some good off night schedules later in the week. And I was just like, no, I'm just going to move right past these guys. No one is that enticing. But remember that they've only scored 1 goal in their last 3 games, which won't continue. The goals will start coming, at which point maybe the points will start too. Like Max Domi was on a really good run up until these 3 scoreless or essentially scoreless games from Chicago. So there's still a chance. I wouldn't get so down on these guys. If you were into Domi 3 games ago, still stay into him and keep an eye on how he's doing, especially when those Friday, Sunday games pop up.
Yeah, I'm going to predict 2 points in those 4 games for Max Domi. So
sounds about right.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to go scoreless forever, but I don't think he's going to explode. All right. So next up, we'll go to the Anaheim Ducks here, who Erik Karlsson wasn't able to score enough points against to win the cup that year. Wait, was Karlsson on the team back then when the Sens made it? Oh, I guess maybe that's too early. Okay. Well, it would have been nice if he was there. Maybe then they would have been able to get past Anaheim. What was that, 2006? But anyway, 2007, my bad. I'm really exposing myself as not the biggest Sens fan in the world. I'm sorry. I thought I was. At the time I was. I would have remembered that for many years. But anyways, on Anaheim here, who's hot, who's not hot? Cam Fowler. That's the only player listed. Very impressive. He's kind of like a Josh Morrissey, but, a couple years. Well, I don't know. I'm thinking like reminds me of Josh Morrissey because he's someone who like was in a good spot for a little while and we thought maybe he was going to be something that he wasn't for a while. And all of a sudden he is. And Cam Fowler has been like for a really long time. And we already talked about it on the last show. We were trying to remember another power play defenseman on Anaheim before Cam Fowler. And I think it ended up being Lubomir Visnovsky. Was that someone reached out and suggested
Lubomir Visnovsky.
Anyways, Fowler is still producing. So he's got 14 points his last 13 now, an assist in each of his last couple games. Klingberg is back. And, Fowler was still on the top power play. Anaheim plays 4 games next week. If he's still out there in free agency, go get him. Like they play Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, right? So get him for Monday, Tuesday if you have room. You're not going to be too disappointed. So he's hot. He's the only hot player right now, according to Frozen Tools.
Yeah, with 4 points in his last 6, which is good from a defenseman. He's not shooting a ton, but he is still on that top power play. And boy, is that telling that Fowler is still up on that top unit, even with Klingberg back. That is an experiment that went very poorly for both teams, right? Like John Klingberg looking to say, okay, where can I bet on myself? Take a good contract this year so I can take a several multi-year good contract after this. And you wonder if that ship has sailed for Klingberg and how soon the Ducks want to move on from him. So way to go, Cam Fowler, for holding down that top power play spot. It hasn't taken much. It's 3 power play points in his last 10 games. About 6 in his last 14 since he's taken over on that top unit. But that is, again, miles better than what John Klingberg was doing.
Yeah, I think Klingberg, for the Ducks, it doesn't really matter, right? Like they took a 1 year. They're not planning to win this year. They were hoping they could like sign him and then trade him at the deadline to get a pick. Maybe they still will get a pick. Maybe it just won't be as good of a pick as they were hoping they would get. But unless I don't know. To me, like $7 million is a lot of money. Maybe to them, it was like, whatever. They'll spend $7 million. They were going to spend it on someone anyways. So but for Klingberg, things are really not looking like he's going to get that huge contract. Maybe he'll have to take another 1 year contract next year. He'll be a fun guy to see what happens with him. Okay, next up is the Washington Capitals, who Karlsson has 21 points in 29 games in his career. Over in Washington, the hot players are Evgeny Kuznetsov is showing up on the list. Finally, right? He has had such a disappointing start to the year. It was looking like this year was going to be a super bust. He was even off the top power play for a while, but lately he's got 6 points in his last 5 games. Maybe more interestingly, like 4 of those points are from the power play, and I'm seeing he's been back on PP1, which is very good news for him, because that was like, how could someone be such a big star last year and then not even get a shot on the top power play? The problem potentially is that Nicholas Backstrom is apparently skating, and so is Tom Wilson, though I would think that Kuznetsov should be ahead of those guys and still hold that top power play spot. But at the end of the day, I guess it's still also a little disappointing that he's not been centering Ovechkin. It's been Dylan Strome that's been centering Ovechkin. Kuznetsov has been playing with TJ Oshie, which is pretty good. And I don't know who else. Connor Sherry.
Sonny Milano.
Sonny Milano. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And playing with TJ Oshie, I'd say like pretty good seems on like the high side of describing playing with TJ Oshie.
I see. Okay. So Kuznetsov then moving forward, do you think like now's a good time to sell? Like, are we still a bit worried about him? And now like that he's on this hot streak, you're saying that if he's playing at even strength with not even people that are that good, then maybe this isn't going to last?
Yeah. I mean, you got to like Kuznetsov so long as he's playing on the top power play unit with Ovechkin. Like that's a good enough spot to be interested in keeping him. But if you're expecting him to repeat last season's 80-point pace away from Ovechkin at 5-on-5, I wouldn't expect that to happen. And Dylan Strome, I don't think he's even been that great, or he's been putting up okay points. He's got 6 points or 7 points in his last 10 games, which is pretty decent, but it's enough to not have to move on from, right? If that's working out for Dylan Strome with Ovechkin, then Washington doesn't need to load Kuznetsov up onto that top line, because you have to figure this is their best way to spread out the offense on a team that is not terribly deep. So I don't know that Kuznetsov gets back on the top line with Ovechkin, but of course, if Backstrom comes back in whatever shape he's in, we'll have to see how that impacts. It's been so long since we've seen a competent Nicholas Backstrom that I don't know if I can really get into trying to predict exactly where he's going to land on the roster.
Yeah, I fear it's going to be maybe a Jonathan Toews situation where he will be there and will do something every once in a while, but might not be what he once was, unfortunately. Washington, by the way, is playing right now against Winnipeg, and they're up 4-2. And once again, Charlie Lindgren in the net, once again, having a really good game. So Brian, I think you already brought that up in part 1, but yeah, I wonder if that's going to lead to a bit of a competition now with Darcy Kemper. If Darcy Kemper, obviously he'll come back, he'll get a game once he's healthy, and apparently he's been skating already with the team. But if Kemper lays an egg, like Caps aren't a guaranteed team to make the playoffs. It's really tough in the East, so they're going to probably go back to the goalie who's helping them. So definitely a situation to watch. And I definitely regret a little bit last week. Brian, you were like being kind to us, being like, yeah, and last week we mentioned Charlie Lindgren and talked about how he's going to get opportunity. I feel like we spent most of our time talking about Hunter Shepard, and I was like excited about him getting an opportunity. He hasn't played, unfortunately.
Too much Hunter Shepard talk for sure.
Okay, Ottawa Senators are next. So not that many games, but 7 games against the Sens, and Karlsson has 5 assists. Still hasn't scored against the Sens. That'll be a fun prop bet if you can make it. Like, is Erik Karlsson ever going to score a goal against the Ottawa Senators? We'll have to wait and see. What's your pick, Brian? Do you think he will, or do you think not so much?
It depends on where he plays beyond San Jose.
Oh, you think he's going to get moved?
I think it's definitely possible. I don't see why they'd want to stay invested in his contract while they're probably heading into a rebuild. They don't have a competitive team.
Yeah, though I feel like
a good guy to kickstart the rebuild.
I feel like, Brian, and I say this every year, so you're probably just gonna roll your eyes at me here. I feel like San Jose next year could be good because they've got
with Kaapo Kähkönen.
Well, no, not with him. But if they get a good goalie, but they have, they have like these good players in the minors, right? Like they have William Eklund, they have Bordeleau. Like they specifically had players who I was surprised they didn't even make the team this year, but clearly they had it in their head that like, we're going to give it one more year. We're going to give these guys a full season in the AHL to get experience. And I feel like that's like the San Jose like hasn't had too much trouble scoring goals. And now they're going to bring in like these guys. And I think there's some other prospects. Get John Reed on here and he'll tell you about all the exciting prospects in the San Jose pipeline. But clearly those Gushin is another one. I don't know, that's on my fine dynasty team, so I know about him. But I think San Jose could be good maybe in not a short time. And they did also like sign Tomas Hertl to that long contract, right? So they are kind of invested in the
which was kind of like yeah, I mean, I think they were at a crossroads and they weren't sure what to do. So like, okay, we'll lock up our best guys long term. And
I wish I could buy stock in the Sharks right now. I feel like they're a team that now is low, and I'll bet you a year from now they're going to be better. like maybe contending for the playoffs next year if they
There's
keep
some
Erik Karlsson.
good
And
young pieces there. They need a
yeah,
goalie.
they need a goalie. Well, they have
They,
what was his name? Not
they need some
Anthony Emmy,
defense.
not
E-
Anthony Emmy, but the
Ito
Kakaniemi.
Makaniemi.
Makaniemi. They have Strauss man. I don't know. We'll see if they sign a free agent. They have Reimer still. Reimer's been decent. I don't know. Yeah, they need a goalie. They could use another defenseman also, but those are gettable. That's what free agency's for. Anyway, okay. We were on Ottawa. I didn't even get to Ottawa yet. Who's hot on Ottawa? It's like the guys that you'd expect: Jake Batherson, Thomas Chabot, Brady Tkachuk.
No,
So
I'm
that's
going to
good.
stop you there. I don't think a
Please.
lot of people would have expected Thomas Chabot to be hot. Like
That's true.
he has had a tough go of it this season. He basically had some production early in the season, but then was quiet for a while. And also, Chabot is someone who has not really been so productive despite being on a power play 1 unit for several years. We've mentioned this on the show before. That's always kind of like a tease that he's up there, but he never really cashes in on it. But now Chabot's on a bit of a tear here. 9 points in his last 8 games. And he's also shooting the puck more than we're used to seeing from him. He's put up 15 shots in his last 4 games. He's super engaged. He has 3 goals in his last 4 games with all those shots. So that's helping. And that's one of the reasons why he's so hot right now, because he is scoring on a few more shots than he should. But 2 of those goals came on the power play. So there's hope for Thomas Chabot. He's now basically up to where we'd expect him to be, which is a mid 50 point pace. And I think there was a lot of concern that he wasn't even going to make it there because of the way Ottawa was going to split their power plays. But so far, what he's doing lately is enough to, I think, rebuild our faith that Thomas Chabot is going to be sort of that steady, not off the charts kind of guy, but he'll be a steady enough player that is going to make you happy that you have him on your roster, even if he's not blowing the doors off.
Okay. Yeah, it's nice. And definitely anyone who like traded for Chabot while he was injured, while he was in a cold streak, now are like reaping the rewards there. Okay, next up is the Philadelphia Flyers, who are playing today. They're currently losing 4-3 to Arizona with 6 minutes left. So we'll see how they do. As far as the hot and colds go for Philly, Tony DeAngelo is listed in the hot section, which is interesting because he was healthy scratched for a game last week. But then I think there was some news that came out that Tortorella said that he was like healthy scratched, quote unquote, but like kind of banged up and he wanted to give him a bit of a rest.
Oh,
so
that's
like,
interesting. I saw a tweet today that like he's not playing tonight, but because of a family matter.
Right. So it was like earlier in the week. I was going to get to that. Yeah. Earlier in the week, it was the banged up healthy scratch. And now tonight he's the family matter healthy scratch. But anyways, when he has played, he has 4 points in his last 4 games. But we'll wait and see if, he comes back soon. Hopefully everything's okay with DeAngelo's family. But overall, kind of a disappointing season, but I don't know. I expected more. I wonder if maybe things could get better. They've gotten a reinforcement back in JVR. Remember when JVR was like really good and a player that we cared about? Like
that was a while ago now.
He's been injured for a while, but so he's back. He's playing on like, top 6, like playing with Tippett and Morgan Frost, and he's on the top power play. He's probably available in a lot of leagues. No points. Oh no, he's having a huge game today. He has a goal and 2 assists against Arizona. So I don't know, if you're in a super deep league, he's probably out there, and it's hard to find top 6 top power play guys. But yeah, it has, like you said, Brian, it's been a while since he's been like consistently really good. So only for your deepest of leagues are you kind of interested in
yeah, like maybe he turns out to be great with John Tortorella. Last year was really disappointing for James Van Riemsdyk. 38 points over 82 games. The year before that, like he's been sort of up and down, bouncing between a 50 and 60 point player for a little while and never really getting full run of deployment in any one place. Like he seemed to bounce from top line to bottom 6, top power play to second unit. And so we'll see. I'm curious. We've only seen so much of him so far this year. He was barely shooting in the games that he did play, so that wasn't encouraging. His minutes were also down under Tortorella, but I'd like to see another few games now that Van Riemsdyk is back to see exactly where Tortorella places him on the roster. Not even to say that top 6 is that like, it's still not the best place to be. In top 6 in Philly, maybe like a mid 6 somewhere else, and even the top power play isn't that great, but you still have an extra guy on the ice. And if James Van Riemsdyk is one of those guys, there is potential for him to be a decent stream. And then we'll see if we can upgrade his status from there.
Okay. Could you remind me again, what's the lotto line? That's Besser, Pedersen, and who?
Miller.
Horvat? Oh, and Miller.
640 and 9.
Good one. Okay.
Get it?
Yeah, now I get it.
Do you get the
Now I finally get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, we go to the Vancouver Canucks, who Karlsson has 16 points in 25 games in his career. And the Canucks have, typical guys as your hot streaks. Nothing too interesting here. Pettersson, Horvat, Quinn Hughes. I think the most interesting thing going on in Vancouver right now is in the middle of their last game, the lines got shaken up and Boudreau put back the lotto line. Pettersson, Besser, and JT Miller were back together, which was, I guess, not great news for Ilya Mikheyev, who had been scoring a couple goals from that spot playing with Pettersson. Artie Kuzmenko also had been scoring goals playing with Pettersson, but now, at least for that stretch in the last game, they switched it up, but who knows? They didn't win. Like maybe now Vancouver will go back.
Yeah, they didn't win. They didn't score. And it was like a desperation move. I think I saw someone mention that was the first time under Bruce Boudreau, the lotto line had been put together. Also, Boudreau's so mad with his team. He was asked why he didn't pull the goalie. Like they were down 3. Sometimes you can be aggressive and do that goalie pull with 3 or 4 minutes left. See if you can get back in the game. His answer was, I didn't believe we would score a goal, so I didn't pull the goalie. Can you imagine?
Yikes.
Every year this happens in Vancouver. What's going on? What's in the water? It seems like a team that should be happier than they are.
Yeah, I mean, they made a really big mistake getting Oliver Ekman-Larsson in that trade. They thought that they were going for like a win now, and they were really wrong about it. And they could have had.
It was still even the wrong win now move to get Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Well, it was like
trade.
Yeah, it was like Larson, and they got like a Connor Garland and like whatever, and they dumped some contracts for like that 1 year, but they gave up like Dylan Guenther. Anyways, it was a big mistake. Like
you could have finished that sentence in any number of ways. They made a really big mistake in there were like 5 different ways you could have finished that sentence, and maybe the most prominent one lately, not for fantasy managers, but JT Miller does not seem like somebody you want to be building a franchise with. Like now we can see why this guy's been so talented, but never had an opportunity until getting to Vancouver, where he's basically trying to play himself out of the city now. Ooh. So great that he's still chugging along for the most part for his fantasy managers, but it's a weird situation in Vancouver, and I don't like having too many stocks in it.
Yeah. I have Besser in one league, so I was happy to see him play with Pettersson, but yeah, they still need to actually score once they are together. So we'll have to see the lines for the next game.
We should probably mention, I mean, we were talking about all those backup goalies, Hunter Shepard last time. Spencer Martin took up a bunch of our time. He has been right? Yeah. He hasn't been very good.
But he'll still be the starter for a while. I don't really believe in Colin Delia for whatever it's worth.
Yeah.
All right. Next up. Yeah. Okay. Next up, we are going to the Carolina Hurricanes, who are much better than the Vancouver Canucks. The hot players here, Brent Burns, Sebastian Aho, and Jordan Martinook. So we covered Martinook before. We don't really think that's going to last. Sebastian Aho, unfortunately, has been injured, which has led to Jordan Staal, another Staal, 2 Staal mentions on this show. And Jordan Staal has been on the top line, and I believe he scored a goal in the last game. Oh, wait, that's not even true. I don't know. I thought at some point I saw that Jordan Staal was on the top line, but now I'm seeing the lines in the last game where Svechnikov with Nachas and Stasny, and then Teravainen with Kotkaniemi and Seth Jarvis. So I don't know. Anyways, hopefully Aho will just be back soon and we won't have to worry about those lines. Teravainen, by the way, got an assist. At first, it didn't look like he did. And then I guess after the game, the NHL added one. So nice to see Teravainen get off the schneid. Maybe Aho being gone and Teravainen getting more power play time might be the start of him getting back to how he used to be. That's something I'm watching. Also, another big storyline in Carolina is that Frederik Andersen apparently has been skating and could be back soon, but Kochetkov just got a shutout. So it's going to be interesting to see what Carolina is going to do with their goaltending situation. I just feel like Kochetkov has been so good. Like, can you really send this guy down? But at the same time, you've got Ranta and Anderson, so you're not really going to waive one of them. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to be watching and very interested because Kochetkov just seems like a really good goalie.
I mean, you know how much I love Antti Ranta, but I don't know why do you waive why don't you waive Antti Ranta?
Yeah, I guess it's the kind of thing where he's on a cheap contract. Like he'll definitely get claimed by someone. And then imagine if Frederik Andersen gets injured again, all of a sudden Carolina, maybe like they're just going to assume like we're good enough that we're just going to, send Kochetkov back to the minors anyways.
Yeah.
And tell him kind of like last year, I guess, with Dallas. Right. And they sent their stud young goalie down for a little bit. And then eventually they brought him back and now he's the starter. So maybe.
Yeah. And Kochetkov for his part has been playing really well. He's been playing, I was saying Samsonov, Murray, Shalgren all doing really well. Kochetkov is in that same neighborhood, playing really, really well. So these are goalies who are on very good defensive teams with a lot of run support, and they are still playing better than you might have otherwise expected them to. So Kochetkov making a case to stay up, and he's also young. He's 23 years old. He turns 24 in June. So Like this is still very early in Kochetkov career. So maybe development is probably the better path in holding Ranta and Anderson, assuming both are healthy. So that Kochetkov, maybe we'll see him again later. But for now, I think enjoy these starts while they're happening.
Yeah, and like Carolina's so good, they're going to be fine either way. By the way, one hot streak I'll just bring up here: Brady Shea has points in 3 straight. He's got like 5, 4, 3, 3, 3 shots. Like he's shooting a lot. He did this last year also, and it was a really good stretch. And Carolina has 4 games next week, so I'm not saying this is going to be a whole season hold or anything, but I'd be looking closely at Brady Shea if I needed D. Like if I, especially look at your busy day schedules. Like I said again next week, if on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday you have like open D spots, but then forwards on your bench, take a look at Brady Shea, especially for league counts shots. He's doing some stuff lately. He had a lot of power play time the last game for the first time like all season. I don't know what that was about, but interesting. Just something that's interesting to me. I don't have Brian, anything to say about Brady Shea? No, you probably want me to move on.
No, it's the same as always with Brady Shea. Oh, look, he's a great guy to have whenever he randomly starts shooting and pointing, and then you drop him. And that's how things go with Brady Shea.
Yeah. And again, like Aho is out. So probably that was part of the reason, like power play is getting shaken up and all of that. Okay. Next up, we've got the St. Louis Blues, who Karlsson has 15 points in 25 games against. As far as the hots and colds go, Buchnevich, Thomas, Tarasenko, guys we've definitely talked a lot about on the show. Colds, we've got Binnington, and we've talked about him a lot. And then Torrey Krug had to join the cold list. He today didn't get a point. Once again, he's now pointless in 3. He did take 6 shots today against Colorado in the loss. So that's something. Obviously, like Torrey Krug, super big disappointment based on like if you drafted him thinking he was going to be like at least like a 50-point defenseman. He's not even a 40-point defenseman so far. I think he'll probably end up around 45. But yeah, big disappointment for sure in Torrey Krug. But I do like seeing the 6 shots today. Would have been nice if one went in.
It would have been really nice for one to go in. Like this is the Torrey Krug that we haven't seen show up in St. Louis. The guy who was able to take a lot of shots, especially on the power play in Boston. In St. Louis, I mean, we've been through this. A lot of things have just constantly gone wrong / just not clicked for Torrey Krug as a member of the St. Louis Blues. This just doesn't seem to be a fit. I don't know that it ever will be, but it is really nice to see a big shot game from the guy who has 5 power play points in 25 games, which is it's okay. It's just not great. Like he used to get 30 power play points in a season with Boston. And without that, his 5-on-5 production isn't strong enough to bring him up to the value he used to have. So Elon, I'll take the over still on 45 points. Like I think Torrey Krug can still do better than he's done so far. But I would prefer someone like Josh Morrissey to him for sure, which you're going to Roy. Oh yeah, obviously. No doubt. I would still prefer Torrey Krug. How about this to JJ Moser?
Yeah, I'll agree with. I mean, I have both on my team, or I have Torrey Krug and I had Moser, and I did drop Moser. If I dropped Krug, I'd have a better chance of winning my matchup today because Moser was having a good game. But I'm not going to regret that too much. Another guy quickly I'll mention who was a big winner for Dave last week on Stream Scheme, Josh Levo has been playing on the top line with Shen and Ryan O'Reilly, and he was on a nice little run. He scored goals in 2 straight games, no points today. I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to like ask you to dive into him, but if you need a streamer, for Monday, let's say, like St. Louis does play tomorrow, Josh Levo is probably available in your league and he's in a good spot right now. Let's go next to the Vegas Golden Knights, who are currently playing against Boston. It's 1-1. I said in the last show that I could really use Vegas to win. And right now it's still 1-1. So both goalies are doing really well. My opponent has Allmark and I have Thompson. And like, come on, Logan, like get this for me. But what's going on? So there's a lot of injuries right now in Vegas, right? Like Petrangelo's hurt, or Petrangelo's like attending to a family matter. And then Shea Theodore is hurt. Apparently it's not like long-term, but at least for today, I guess who's that leaving on the top power play? It must be
it's Ben Hutton. If you weren't able to guess, I'm sorry if I didn't give anybody enough chance to guess. Do you also know who's playing on the top power play with Eichel out? Right, because there's a nice big forward spot available there too, playing alongside Mark Stone and Chandler Stevenson. Welcome back, Paul Cotter. Look at that. Some Ben nice Hutton and Paul Cotter, top power play. Paul Cotter's a rookie. He had like a cup of coffee last season. He's from Canton, Michigan, drafted in the 4th round back in 2018 with Henderson last season. Like he's not even been a great scorer in the AHL, 34 points in 59 games. I guess Vegas saw that he was a good enough player to be with them most nights this year, as he's been. This is his 20th game of the season, but I'm not sure why he is the like the next best choice here to be on the top power play unit. I guess they don't want to break up the second unit, like Kessel, Smith, Karlsson, Nicholas Roy. Keep them together. Let's bring
Yeah,
Paul
I mean,
Cotter up.
maybe it makes sense. Like, why mess things up? If Eichel's only going to be gone for a game or two, then why not just like kind of leave things consistent? It's been working pretty well, like, but yeah, Shea Theodore, by the way, was so hot before he got injured. Ben and Lewis talked about it on short shifts this week, where he's really stepped up with Pietrangelo out of the lineup. He's got a leg injury. He's going further evaluation. So I'm saying that I thought I saw something that said he's going to get back soon. I don't know that. Like, don't quote me on that, but hopefully, for his sake and for all of his fantasy managers, hopefully he'll be able to get back soon, because yeah, that's a big hole. Like, I don't want to start going and recommending Ben Hutton to people, because I'm just going to hope that that Theodore comes back. Otherwise, if it's still not the case, then I guess you could take a look at Ben Hutton.
I would. If Eichel's healthy, I mean, that power play is still going to score. So yeah, I'd be looking at Ben Hutton as a short-term stream, the same way I added Justin Schultz when it looked like he was going to be at least the power play quarterback in the short term, and then he instantly went back to being the second power play guy. I would still be into Ben Hutton the same way. Patty also in the chat is saying that she's been watching the Vegas game and she likes what she's seen from Paul Cotter.
Okay.
He has caught her eye.
And Shams is letting us know that the coach said he was not concerned about the Shea Theodore injury, but they're still looking at him. So what does the coach know? So I guess we'll find out. Okay. So speaking of this other side of this game, the Boston Bruins are actually next on the list here. Who's hot? Linus Ullmark. We've definitely covered that. David Pasternak, we've definitely covered that. Taylor Hall, though, is interesting because he's not even getting great deployment. We called him a snoozer or close to it at some point, so of course he had to start going off. Though now he has no points in his last couple games, including today, which isn't over yet, but he has like 4 shots today, at 5 shots in the last games. I don't know, all of a sudden Taylor Hall is coming on. Before that, he was scoring goals. He had 5 goals in a stretch of 4 games. Is he like Kevin Fiala, like he needs to go down to the third line in order to be productive? Is that how this works?
I'm just shaking my head. Like, I really truly don't know. I mean, a big part of Taylor Hall's production lately, like on the run he was on, he had 5 goals over 4 games, and those came on 14 shots. So he scored on 1 of every 3 shots he took, but he still took 14 shots over 4 games, which is not something Taylor Hall has been doing all season long. And we talked about maybe the reasons why earlier in the year was that he was deferring to David Pasternak. And I guess when you play on, he's back with Pasternak and, sorry. No, he's not. I was looking at the wrong place. Oh yeah, he is. But he is back with Pasternak now and shooting. So I'm not sure exactly. Like, I don't know what to make of Taylor Hall's just like consistent inconsistency. I love that he's shooting again. If he's been dropped, I'm going to see if I can pick him up out of free agency. He's averaging 4 shots per game now over his last several. So if he keeps doing that, the goals are going to start going in. He's back with Pasternak. Remember, we saw a 70-point Taylor Hall last season when he was playing with David Pasternak. So the potential is there. I just don't know why he didn't realize it earlier in the season, and if anything has substantially changed now. This guy's become an enigma.
Sorry, who are you talking about again? My bad.
Taylor Hall.
Oh yeah, of course, right. I brought him up. Yeah, he and like Tyler Seguin are the 2 people to me that it's just like, are they good now? Are they not good now? I seem to change my mind like every single week. Okay, we're going to the Rangers next. You are not going to be surprised. Brian, do you already have it in front of you, or do you want to try to guess the hot players on the Rangers?
I don't have it in front of me.
I think you'll be able to guess it. I think you'll guess 3 and 3. I think you can do this.
Like all the hot and all the cold?
Well, you could guess the 3 hot. I'm saying in 3 guesses, I'll bet you can guess the 3 hot.
Okay, Capo Caco.
Oh, okay. Well, why'd you? I'm telling you, it's obvious. It's the best players on the team.
Well, but this is like relative production, right? And he had a goal.
Okay,
so
no.
I thought.
All right. Do you want to try again?
Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin.
Yeah. Okay. Not Kreider. It's just Jorkin instead of Kreider. But aside from that, yeah, it's like the studs are studding. And an interesting thing, though, on the Rangers is the Capo Cacos of the world are getting chances to play with the studs, because they've been playing a line of Zibanejad with Kakko and Lafreniere, which is just like huge and great news for Kakko and Lafreniere, because Zibanejad is clearly an actual stud. And on the top power play, it's just been the same as usual: Zibanejad, Kreider, Trocheck, Panarin, and Adam Fox. But anyway, when they're not on the top power play, you can't get too excited. Like, yeah, I like that Kakko and Lafreniere are playing with Zibanejad, and that's leaving, by the way, Trocheck to play with Kreider and VC, and then Panarin with Hedel and Goodrow. So they're trying to go for weird 3 lines.
Yeah.
I don't know how long this is going to last. theoretically it's like good news for Hedo. Like Panarin's like one of the hottest guys in the league right now. So I'd want to get his centerman, but am I really gonna, recommend him on the podcast when it could change at any time? I don't know. So like for your
Agree.
deeper leagues, there's a lot of interesting players, but I don't know like who to recommend. But watch those Rangers lines, and probably one of them is gonna get a point if they're playing with all these studs.
Yeah, the recommendation is to watch the Rangers lines, but also know that they're not like we've seen Kakko and Lafreniere play with great lines at 5-on-5 and not do anything. And Kakko, so frustrating. Like he has 0 or 1 shots on goal in his last 6 games, 4 shots in his last 6 games, never more than 1. He scored on one of them. He's got an opportunity playing with Zibanejad and Lafreniere, but Elon, I don't know. It's starting to feel like to me like this is just going to be another year where Lafreniere and Kakko don't break out. And meanwhile, like I don't know if Hedo's gonna get relevant before they do. Although he's got a bit of a hill to climb still too. But watch these lines, see who's playing with who. But really, unless you're playing with 2 of Kreider, Zibanejad, Panarin, and Trocheck, then I'm not sure I'm really getting that interested. And even then, Jimmy Vesey is right now playing with Trocheck and Kreider, and he's not doing anything either. So I just don't know if anyone is allowed to score outside of these core 4 in New York.
Yeah, everyone else is clearly a streamer and not going to be a season-long hold this year, unfortunately. Maybe next year. I don't know. Probably not the way things are going. Okay, we've got on Nashville, another couple obvious ones. Okay, Brian, guess the 2 hot Nashville players. Don't overthink it.
Duchesne.
Okay, not Duchesne.
Josi.
Josi, yeah. Forsberg and Roman Josi are hot. So Roman Josi has got 14 points in his last 12. If you recall, he had kind of a slow start to the year. Only 1 assist in his first, I think, 7 games I'm seeing. So if anyone was able to buy low on him, that would have been huge because now, like I said, he's over a point per game since then. He's already up to 21 points in 25 games on the year, and it's going up and up and up. So he's very good. And I don't think we doubted him, Brian. I'll have to go back and listen to the old episodes, but I'm pretty sure we were saying Josi will be fine. Maybe I was saying, because he does have a pattern. Like if you look at his past few seasons, it's like from 2018-19 and moving forward, his point paces were 56, 77, 56, 98. And then this year he started slow. So maybe I was saying like, maybe he'll be closer to the 56. Right now he's pacing for 70, probably somewhere in the middle, right? Maybe not as low as 56, not as high as 98, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up around the 70-point pace that he's on right now, right?
Right, exactly. I think Josi has earned the benefit of the doubt. I think we can pretty much rely on this guy to keep doing what he's doing. I don't see any kind of markers to suggest that he's about to fall off.
Yeah. Did you see, by the way, Eeli Tolvanen got waived today? So I wonder if anyone's going to claim him. What a fall from grace for him.
Well,
you used to call him the savior of the power play.
And he was briefly. I wasn't the only one. I didn't make that up. It wasn't just me. But I don't know if it's a fall from grace for him or just a fall from grace in Nashville. I think from all accounts, like I looked into him a bit since he was put on waivers, and he seems like a perfectly serviceable NHLer with top 6 upside, who is not a defensive liability and has some scoring potential, decent finisher, decent setter. I use hockeyviz.com a lot, and those are the terms that Mika Blake McCurdy uses over there. So I think a team could be very fortunate to have him, but we've seen a lot, like guys with these sorts of pedigrees who don't click with their original team, end up moving somewhere else, and we get excited and we don't see anything. So I'm not holding my breath for Tolvanen, but it would be great for him to get a fresh start with a team that could actually use him, and we'll see where he lands. He could be, honestly, even worth a waiver claim as someone. Maybe you build him up for like 3 months and then you sell him for a second rounder.
Sure. Anyways, in fantasy, he's great for hits. So if you can find him, like if he lands somewhere where he gets an opportunity, so if he lands somewhere where he's going to get a decent opportunity, you might want to grab him in your categories leagues at the very least to get those hits. Remember that guy Juuso Parssinen, who we were excited about when he got called up, and then he was getting top line, top power play, getting points. He's on the cold list now, no points in 7 games. So I guess he's lost that deployment. Clearly, everyone knows that already.
I'm going to throw one more Nashville name out there, and that's Matt Duchesne, who I was looking at including in a trade package that I was putting together in the cupful. And I'm like, no, I would be selling low on this guy. In fact, if I didn't have Matt Duchesne, I would be looking to buy high. And I'll give you just 2 reasons why. The first is that he's shooting just 2.5% at 5-on-5. He's never been a big 5-on-5 shooter. Last year, he shot 15%, which I think was maybe over his head, but he usually has shot at least close to 10%. So the fact that Matt Duchesne has just 6 goals in 25 games after scoring 43 last year, I think that's I think there's room for him to grow. Maybe not all the way back to that 43 goal pace for the rest of the season, but there's room for Matt Duchesne to have I honestly at least 12 goals by now. And then on the power play, he's pacing for just 16 power play points. And last year, Matt Duchene had 29 power play points. So I think there's room for regression to help Matt Duchene there too. There's been some slow periods for him this season. He has been picking it up a little bit more as of late. And I would be looking to see if you can. Right now, he's pacing for 70 points. If you can pick him up, I think I might consider that.
Okay. Well, you've always been a big fan of Matt Duchene.
Yeah.
So, and now the underlying stats are bearing that out. To finish off, we're going to Seattle, who Karlsson's played now 3 times, only 1 assist. So that's like this year or last year. Give him a couple games, he'll get through it. Especially, I would say, especially if Martin Jones plays. Though Martin Jones actually did have that good game today to ruin my whole narrative. The game ended 5-2 win for Seattle over Florida, and Jones stopped 23 of 25. So I still think that he's not gonna get back to how he was doing before, but clearly goalies are extremely unpredictable. Frozen Tools is showing nobody hot currently in Seattle, but that's maybe doing a disservice to like your Andre Burakovsky. He had a goal and assist today to stay over a point per game. You know, Matty Beniers scored today, so he's now up to 23 points in 27 games. Oh, he also had an assist. I guess he was cold for 3 games before that. Before that, he was hot. So I don't know. No one really interesting here that we haven't talked about already in recent episodes. On the cold streaks, Jaden Schwartz, yeah, he's fallen off. He's probably in free agency in a lot of leagues. And then Justin Schultz and Vince Dunn. There's like no defenseman. This is like a team like we were talking about with Kalen Addison or like in Columbus. Like those are probably the 3 teams where they have the least interesting top power play quarterbacks, just none of them getting any points. So, but if you had to pick one, I don't know, Justin Schultz or Vince Dunn, or just nothing. I don't know.
I would take
Kalen
Vince
Addison.
Dunn. I would take Vince Dunn because he's on the top power play unit, and unlike Kalen Addison, he's also not being healthy scratch. Although I think Addison got a goal in his return from the healthy scratch. At least Vince Dunn, like for a defenseman, 6 shots over his last 2 games, pretty good. And he did come back to the top unit after disappearing from it. I think I would rather him, but this is not a big endorsement for Vince Dunn either. Like I'm not wishing I had Vince Dunn on my team if I don't already.
Okay, and Brian, quick update on the Arizona Philly game, which just ended. Clayton Keller, another goal. Nick Schmaltz, an assist. So that makes it a hat trick for Clayton Keller, I believe, which means probably it's going to get harder to buy on him. It's too bad that we weren't able to release this episode yesterday. So you could have given that advice before he scored the hat trick. For people who know, he only scored 2 goals today before Brian said. I'm sure Brian prepped that even before he saw how today's game went. Jacob Chikrin, the other assist there. And that, Brian, does it for us. We're done the episode. We've covered every single team. Took us a little longer than expected, but I think it was worth it. Would love to hear some feedback, right? Let us know what you thought of this show of both parts. So, tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know on the Discord. We'd love your support, by the way, in terms of a 5-star review, wherever you listen to your shows, a subscription. And yeah, if you really want to be cool, you can become a patron of Keeping Karlsson over at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. We give a ton of perks. Like really, you could even just consider becoming a patron just because you like the show and you just want to support the show and throw us like $5 a month, for a US, it's like not very much money, and it really makes us feel good and it helps us keep going here. But we actually give you like a ton of perks. Brian and I are super active on the Discord where we're answering people's fantasy advice questions all the time. And there are other perks. You can read all about it over at keepingkarlsson.com/patron. But with that, Brian, I'm saying it was a first career Hattie for Keller. That's what Patty's saying. I'm surprised by that. Keller's had a pretty good career, but well, some seasons of it. Anyway, Brian, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, let's cue the outro music. Why don't you go ahead and take us out of here? Read us credits.
All right. I need to, I closed my credit stock. Let me just pull it up here. Believe it or not, I don't have them memorized. I read them every time.
Maybe just do it off the top of your head right now. Just to see how it goes.
I also need the, I like having the list of super supporters.
While you look it up, I'm going to say that it looks like I'm going to win my matchup. I'm up by 9 now. 1 period to go with Boston Vegas. I've got Pasternak and Mark Stone and Logan Thompson, and all he has is Allmark. So unless Thompson just gets destroyed, I got this.
Good job.
Thanks,
I'm on a 4-week losing streak now.
So what's your record now? You're probably still ahead of me.
I'm 4-5.
Oh, 4-5, buddies. I'm also 4-5 now.
Are you excited to be 4-5 buddies? Are you excited to be almost beating me?
No, I'm excited. We're in this together now.
All right. Let's win out from here.
I think it could happen.
Okay.
I also have Vegmelka, by the way. Patty and Andrea are friending out here in the chat about how they have veggie. So do I. I got him too. We're all celebrating together here.
Elon wants to be friends also. Can you guys please include him in your Veggie Tales.
Vegemites.
Why
Isn't
haven't we have
Vegemite a snack in
Australia?
Australia? Oh, I should make that my team name maybe. And then like the logo
Vegemites.
could be like Vegemalka, like eating.
You should make it Veggie Tales.
Anyway, all right,
No
Brian, let's
VeggieTales?
take us out of here.
I'm onto
I really gotta
something
go.
here.
I'm terrible. I'm a terrible husband and father.
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey, empowered by our patrons who truly do support new episodes of the show. So thanks to you all, and especially our super supporters who are supporting us a little more strongly. Thanks, Aaron, Tyler, Andrea, Tom, Ryan, Derek, David, Rob, Ricard, and of course, Patty for your ongoing support. Thank you to our team of Cupful co-commissions and our Cupful coordinator, Kevin Abear. If you want to see more of all that's happening in the Cupful, you can see the standings. Like, you can click in to Tier 1's league and see who people are adding at 3 a.m. Eastern time and who's on rosters, who isn't. Use that. It's a good resource for you. kkupfl.com. Thank you to Shams and you, Elon, for keeping all the amazing fantasy news coming at gamedaytweets.com. Thanks to Ben and Lewis, who are going to come at you with 2 episodes of Short Shifts this week. Follow them at Short Shifts KK. Thanks to Dave, who's weekly episode of the NHL Stream Scheme has just dropped. Follow him at NHL Stream Scheme. Thank you to our logo artist, BrandonWeeb.com. Thank you to Pat Roach for our beautiful outro music. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dauber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and Yahoo!
Great job as always, Brian. Thanks to all the patrons who joined us live. Great job as always, Brian. Thanks again to the patrons who joined us live for our recording. That's another one of the perks, by the way, of becoming a patron of Keeping Karlsson. This has been so much fun. Good luck, everyone, in your matchups next week. Happy holidays, all that stuff. I guess it's time to start saying that. And we'll see you all.
Too early to start saying that. Why are you saying that now?
I don't know. Happy getting ready for the holidays. Good luck.
Happy decorating.
I'm sure the auto-inserted ads that you're getting with this show are all about buying things to prepare for the holidays. So listen to those, and I don't know. I'm just kidding. You don't have to actually buy anything. You won't help us, by the way, if you buy things based on the ads. Just subscribe to the show. What am I saying? Blah blah blah. Bye, Brian. What should we all do as the holiday time is coming and we're all enjoying all this great content about fantasy hockey?
Well, please make sure that you are doing all you can. So, no, let me try that again. Well, I hope what you're doing is doing all that you can to make sure that fantasy hockey can be something for everyone.
Awesome. So fun. See you, pal. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Elon. Bye, everyone in the chat. Thanks for coming.
Okay. Ending the stream. Bye for real. Bye for real to the stream.